you're the
Oh,
birthday,
shit.
you're the birthday, boy or girl. No, I'm kidding. That's from the Simpsons episode, where they went to the
Yes.
Chuck E.
Yes, I
Cheese,
know. Well, now they
and
have to update that. Now you're the birthday boy or girl or whatever.
or whatever you want to be, princess or prince or
Or
Zer.
otherwise. Yeah, exactly.
Happy birthday, Troy! It's Troy's
Thanks so
birthday
much.
today. He is
And
spending time with us on his birthday, so we have to give him a special round of
because it's,
applause.
where am I going to want to be besides hanging out with my friends? But,
You could be doing a
all,
Problem Child marathon, watching Problem Child 1 and Problem Child 2, both in a row.
like I said, where would I be but here with my friends? Um, and I want to thank everybody who's wished me a happy birthday. Friday, last night, and whatnot. But I think there's one that I have to call out special, and he happens to be our first one in the chat, David Pensack. He wished me a happy birthday on Friday. He wished me a happy birthday on Saturday, and he wished me a happy birthday today too.
Rise and sink your teeth, and the Geeky Geezers have arrived. Applause to Aged Boomer and Troy Pacelli. Thank you so
You
much.
know what happens if you get bit by a geeky geezer and you don't die? You turn into a geezer. I don't
Uh,
know. I don't know. I'm making this crap up as I go.
that'd be funny. Let's see. Have a great
I'm
string,
assuming, of
Geezers.
course, y'all are starting out as geeks, so you know.
I don't. It's getting hard to tell what's a geek and what's not these days. If geek culture is just, I don't know. I'm starting
Are
to
you
think the whole.
suggesting some people are faking it? Is that what you're saying?
I would never say that.
Oh, I would. I do think it's true.
Have a
They're
great string,
usually the ones that react very strongly when you use the word Mary Sue.
they get all upset. Okay, good evening, Age Burn Trophy. I'm communicating via a new laptop. New
I
laptops are
thought
nice.
you were typing in an accent.
Uh, Matanui, hello,
Hey,
welcome.
Matanui.
Netter, welcome. Hi, sweetie, thank you. And yeah, we got another happy birthday from D Pensaker. Get a lot of happy birthdays, I'm sure, in this chat.
I
Deleted
appreciate
scenes. You
it.
get a nice applause here. He was applauding with me when I was clapping. Okay, my phone is slow for some reason, but I'm here. Uh,
That's okay. My
yeah.
brain is slow, so we should be in good company.
How was your birthday today, or do you not want
It
to
was
talk about
awesome.
that on air?
No, no, no. I don't mind at all. We didn't. You know, I might be giving you way too much information, but this weekend I don't know if I ate something bad towards the end of the week, but my stomach's been a mess. So I said I really didn't feel like going out today. Netter made me my favorite dish, and we just kind of stayed close to home. She made me gnocchi marinara,
Oh,
shrimp scampi,
yeah,
and,
yum.
and garlic bread. And I ate way too much, so I may have another week of messed up stomach, but it's totally worth it. And cannoli cake, and brings in the cannoli cake with the two numbered candles, because if she'd put 52 candles on, we'd be calling the fire department. I'd be like, Boomer, I can't make it to the stream tonight. My house burnt down, but so yeah.
But
So yeah, it's good.
what is a cannoli cake?
Okay, you know what a cannoli is, right? It's
Yes,
the ricotta
the
cheese
very,
with the
very
sugar and
delicious little Italian
yeah,
pastry made with ricotta, sweet ricotta cheese. It's kind of like how, if you think about how you deal with bread, right?
yeah.
Bread and cake. What's the difference? It's how.
How sweet it is,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah, and
So
also how tough
so
the yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know if they do this in Italy, but in the United States they put chocolate chips into the cannoli. That's good too. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so just think about your thin yellow cake with in between the layers you got cannoli, and then you got the whipped cream frosting with what are those called? Pistachios sprinkled on top.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite. It's what. Well, I'm gonna say I insisted on, but it's not like Netter really had a problem with it. For our 30th wedding anniversary, we yeah, the vow renewal, we got a cannoli cake, and because I was having family and everything, and she's like, "Hey, this is good," and it freezes up really nice. There's rum in the cake, so if you think like it's got the moisture consistency of like a tres leche, but instead of it being milk, it's got rum in it. So when you freeze it, that rum doesn't freeze, so it gets really, really rummy. It's nice.
Well, that's hey.
Troy
bit of
is
rum
the
there,
new
yeah.
52. Oh, you son of a gun. Yeah,
You want to
that's
say
kinda
something
true.
else on there?
No. It's a good one. I'm glad. I hadn't even thought of that, Auditor Shred. That's actually a really good one. Hey,
Hi,
Zootopia. Good to see you.
we're talking about Troy's birthday. So welcome everybody to the chat. Yeah, we're gonna have a lot to talk about tonight. This is a busy news cycle, but I'm hoping to zip through some of these articles. We have some Dungeons and Dragons stuff to talk about later too, which I
Yes,
want
and I
my.
will touch on something that we're not getting into tonight because
Mhm.
I need to do a little bit more research on
Yeah,
it. But I
go
know
ahead.
it's what a lot of people are wondering about regarding D&D, and that's the open game license. I need to dig into those legalities a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, and I want to get it right. And honestly, there's nothing official yet anyway, so we'll hold off on that and get to it another night. But we have other D&D news to get into tonight.
Yes. But happy belated birthday, Troy. Well, it's not belated, it's today.
Yeah, today's my birthday. Yeah, I know a lot of people were thinking because I did the stream on Friday that it was my birthday, but nope. I share a birthday with Elvis Presley, David Bowie, Stephen Hawking, Shirley Bassey, and the first Doctor. I don't care what you say now; he's always going to be the first Doctor, William Hartnell.
Don't bring up Timeless Child. Boy, they really
You
screwed
know
the
what?
pooch
It's
on
funny
that one.
because I thought I was wading into an online battle on the Doctor Who Twitter page where somebody was saying something about. There was a little bit of a debate over the numbering of the doctors, 11, 12, and when you start getting
Moffat
into
screwed that up, by the way.
yeah, when you
Just
start
letting you
getting
know.
into the yeah, when you start getting into I blame it a little bit on Eccleston. I blame it a little bit, on a number of things. But
Well, I had always assumed Eccleston had regenerated from Paul McGann.
that's what we all assumed. Only come to find out when he didn't want to return for that for the special, they brought in a doctor in between, which was William Hurt, or wait, John Hurt.
John Hurt. Which, to
Sorry.
be fair, that alone, I would have forgiven that. But then they do the end
If you have an
special.
opportunity to get John Hurt, I mean, I guess you kind of take it and work continuity around him, right?
Then they do the end special where it's like, oh, the one guy regenerated twice, and I'm thinking, which doctor were they referring to? Eccleston?
No, they were talking. They were actually they were tongue in cheek about it, but they were answering a fan question. I don't fault him.
Is
for
this like when
either.
you had the two David Tennant doctors,
Yes.
one grew out of it, and
Yes.
that cost the regeneration
So-
to get the human?
so what they
that
argue-
makes some sense, but they
It
should have
does.
explained that at the time. They
It
should have
does.
explained that at the time that happened.
You're right, and one could argue there were a lot of fans that believed that was the case anyway. All they were doing was kind of confirming a fan theory because it's like you actually regenerated. That regeneration energy was a regeneration. Where did it go? What is it? Well, it was the meta crisis doctor. He made a new doctor. It's not another regeneration of him, but he used up a regeneration doing it. And
Which makes sense.
it does. It absolutely does. So then when Matt Smith's doctor's explaining that he's the last one, he doesn't get any more regenerations, and he kind of goes through it, the fans that had any questions before were like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, we kind of wasted two, right? We wasted two.
Except there was the sequence where he got shot twice because he didn't have time to regenerate after getting shot the second time. When I guess
there's actually a number of times, even from the older doctors, where the regeneration, he's still in the middle of regenerating, so he, it doesn't count, or he doesn't really die because he's still regenerating. Right. They work around things like that.
The best regeneration was Peter Davidson, the Colin Baker, because you could tell that the doctor really got hurt.
Yeah.
And he wasn't sure if he was going to regenerate. Remember that? He's like...
Well, and back then they were establishing something that I thought was very clever, because now it's even worse. But back then it was like, well, if he's going to regenerate every time, there's no stakes. And they wanted to get across a regeneration is not a guarantee. No. I mean, that's like when your heart stops and they're trying to resuscitate you. is what it really is. There's no guarantees. They wanted there to be stakes with the regeneration, and I think, and it wasn't implemented very well. But when they went to Colin Baker, they were trying to demonstrate that it's not an easy thing. It was a bad regeneration, and so he was not himself, so to speak. But they did it in a very poor narrative way. So everyone ended up freaking hating him.
From the get-go, yeah.
Yeah.
It took a while for people to warm up to Colin Baker, yeah. But that
and
was
by
just...
that time, a lot of people had already stopped watching. I mean, you know,
See,
history
the problems,
repeats itself, too.
The problems with shows, they're not new. They've been happening a while. It's just that now we have the woke veneer to excuse. And I think that's to be a distraction against other stuff going on, too. But I'm not saying it's not part of the problem also, as we'll get into later tonight. But all right, so...
You know, Big Al is saying 10 had vanity issues. No kidding. This is the third time he's on the same damn face.
10 had vanity issues. Favorite is Capaldi to Whitaker. I'd hope you'd like Capaldi better than Whitaker. But anyway, what are we talking about tonight?
I don't know, man.
Good old days.
Whitaker's the only doctor I've seen nude, so I don't know what to tell you about that.
These British actors.
I know.
What the heck? Where has Daisy Ridley's career gone after Star Wars? Has it gone anywhere? I would have pleaded with
Knives Out, wasn't she? Or
no,
was it
she was
Express one.
Orient Express, but that was during
Okay.
it. She should maybe try to go back to maybe get something with the BBC.
No, she should just stick to social media, ripping on the fans.
No.
You know, telling everybody that they're idiots and phobes and stuff for not liking the.
Has that happened?
Sequels. No, I'm just saying that seems to be what a
lot of these people
stars do
right.
when they're in between films and they're not getting any acting.
So, we're going to do a bit of a good old days because it ties into a news story later tonight, and I figure we would reminisce a little bit about. It's a new game from.
Revenge is here from Atari. Have you played Atari today?
Okay, you did it better than I did. Yar's Revenge. Yeah, well, we're actually beyond Yar's Revenge. The Atari 20. I guess the Atari 2600. I guess this is your baby, huh? So.
It is. This was one of those, and I think when we were in a previous stream, we were talking about how what was your best gift from your childhood and stuff like that, and I think I mentioned the Atari 2600. If I remember correctly, it was released in like 82. No, late 70s, 77, 78. I don't know. It was right out there somewhere, and I remember seeing the commercials for it. It hadn't come out yet, so I had a bunch of friends that were talking about wanting to get it. I had the only game console that was out that I knew about that a friend of mine had was that Pong one. You know, where you know.
We had that. Did it come with the guns too? Was that part of the set, or was it just Pong?
I don't remember. We only ever played Pong on it, and you had the kind of attached, twisty, knobs.
I remember that, yeah.
And I loved it. It was simple. I loved it. And then when I saw Atari was coming out, I'm like, hey, this is a game system like that, but you get all kinds of games. And then when I saw they were bringing out like Pac-Man and Space Invaders, and so it was arcades were different back in our day. They had the big consoles. You've seen them in like Stranger Things and stuff. These
sure,
big things. And the older kids would go and they'd line up their quarters on there, and they just keep funneling quarters. And you could stand in line for 2 hours while the guy in front of you just kept pumping quarters into it, and you never got to play.
Interesting. And I can imagine someone going up to the clerk saying, "Hey, he's taking forever." He says, "Yeah, well, you know what? He's the money man. Like he's the right. That's the guys with the stacks. That's where they're getting the money from, not the kid spending the 1 or 2 quarters he has, right?"
That's absolutely right. And money talks. So, but that would annoy me. My mother and my grandmother got annoyed because they're like, that's kind of not fair. So when this came out, I'm like, look, this is my opportunity to play these games in the privacy of my own home as much as I want, But it was expensive. I mean, in '70s dollars. I mean, this was not a cheap gift for a middle class family.
What was the retail price for an Atari 2600 in, was it late 70s? Is that when you got one?
Yeah, late '70s.
Atari 2600. We're looking at the price now too.
I'm looking to see if I can find a retail price. Retail store.
But you can go ahead and talk about it. Whoa! $189.95. That is not cheap for especially 77.
Yep.
What would that be like adjusted? That would be what, 400 maybe today? I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
they have conversions for it. So,
yeah.
How much did you say it was?
$189.95. Back then, 95 cents was a thing at the end of things.
Yeah.
I'll be blunt with you. Back then, 33 or 34 cents at the end of things was a thing because they actually counted pennies, like even into the early 90s.
Yeah, it would be it would be worth about 500 today. 498.
This would be your Xbox or your PlayStation 5. You'd be going out to buy, which by today's standards. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we're yeah. I mean, it could have been as much as a little over $500. So that was expensive, and so there was no way my parents could afford that. It really required my parents, my grandparents, and my uncle all going in together on it. And I gotta admit, it was worth it to me because it was. Yeah, I knew it was expensive, but I got a couple of games out of it. It came with a game called Combat, which was kind of a step up from that Pong because now you had these two-dimensional tanks that you could like get to fire at each other, and you could move them around and move them into strategic positions, and it was actually a lot of fun. I mean, this was like the freebie throw-in game. But I loved it. It was great. And
sometimes those can be really good. Sometimes they can be not so good. Just depends.
The other thing about these very low resolution games was that they did tend to have glitchiness to them, and sometimes the glitches were phenomenal. There was a way that if you were between a wall and the person you were trying to shoot at, and you shot at them point blank, both of your tanks would go flying across the screen and come back on the other side of the screen. It was the first time I saw that happen, I laughed so hard. I don't remember even who I was playing against. They got a chance to shoot back at me because I was laughing too hard to react. It was just brilliant.
So it's basically like slapping you into next Tuesday. Is that
exactly kind of like that? Yeah, exactly like that. And there was a game that they got me called Adventure, which was
that's a famous one. Yeah,
super low resolution. You got to use your imagination. You had dragons that would come after you that I swear could just as easily have been Big Bird as a dragon. It was just, it was ridiculous. Giant bats, I suppose they were supposed to be bats that would come and take things from you. You had to get certain items, but those of you that are used to these video games where you had an inventory and you could put a bunch of things into your inventory, no. In Adventure, you could only carry one item at a time. So you need to go and find the key. Well, that's great. You take your sword to fight the dragon to get the key, and then you got to put down your sword to pick up the key. Unless there was a way you could get away with carrying two items. You know what that was, Boomer?
2 controllers hooked in?
No, not at all.
Wow.
You position them so that the key is in front of the sword, and then you walk into both of them, and you're picking up and dropping in front of you as you walk. But then if you want to turn the corner, you got to rearrange the orientation of the objects.
Holy cow, that's an exploit. Okay.
It was kind of an exploit. That's right, yeah.
Okay. So Adventure, that was like the first The closest I might be able to compare it to you youngins out there, maybe it's what The Legend of Zelda might have come from. This was
Oh, in a way, you're kind of right.
like
Yeah, yeah,
Legend of
yeah.
Zelda. You did get an inventory, but they say adventure is probably the first stab at trying to make a game like that. I think, yeah, because there's dragon. I guess you're in a dungeon as well, right, or something. Trying
Yeah.
to, yeah, okay. And they're keys. You need to get keys in Zelda, so everything starts from someplace. I remember they were trying to make fighting games before Street Fighter 2. They were trying to make first person shooters before Wolfenstein 3D. They just you have to wait for that one game to come out and then suddenly it clicks. They get
Now,
everything right.
and
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. The games were a mixed bag. They really were, because some of them were brilliant. Some of them just didn't quite make it. Like, for example, the Star Wars arcade game on the Atari 2600 was not very good at all. No, it wasn't. The Space Invaders, though, pretty good. Pretty good. It wasn't exactly the same as the arcade, but it was still really good. And the nice thing about it was you didn't just get Space Invaders. You had multiple different variations on it. There were some that you could do that were, well, you could do one player, you could do two player, you could do it where it was just you trying to get the UFO going across. There were other variations. You could do it where the shields in front of you move back and forth.
Oh, that's an interesting.
Yeah. So there were little variations that they.
So it's like
do.
Space Invaders Plus, basically. It's like extra stuff.
But the thing to remember is that even the big consoles had so little memory. They really did. It was ridiculous. Nowadays, you could take all of the games in all of the arcade, put them on a little disc, and put them into your computer today. But back then, you needed that whole console. And Space Invaders was a perfect example of exactly what that limitation was. Because you've all seen it, especially if you've seen like, Stranger Things or something like that. You've got these rows of aliens. Boop, 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 boop. And they're moving back and forth. And they get to the end and they drop down. And they're moving very slowly. And you're trying to shoot them while they're trying to shoot you. You're literally being rained on by these bullets of theirs, right? But as you shoot more and more of them, it starts to go faster and faster. Did you know that was a bug that they decided to call a feature? They did not program that in initially. The sprite count on the screen was so high that it was already going as fast as it could. So as you destroyed more of the aliens,
get faster.
It got faster because there was nothing built into it to clock down the processor. And when they saw this, they were like, this is actually pretty cool. Let's just leave it like this.
Okay. Yeah, and it works. I didn't have an Atari 2600 growing up, but we had an Atari computer, and I had a version of Space Invaders for that called Deluxe Invaders, and it was like that would happen with there, where everything would get fast at the end and everything. I have a question for you, though. Let's talk about. I have to bring up a sore spot for many with the old Atari 2600, Pac-Man.
Yeah, Pac-Man.
Okay, I need to explain something to y'all. I know nowadays you think Pac-Man comes out for a game console. The company that makes it, Namco, a Japanese company, would be the ones making it. Back in those days, I believe Atari would license the arcade game, but then they would make it in-house. Is that right? I believe that's how they did it, except for the Activision games, because
except for the Activision games, they would be considered like a licensee,
like a third party, unofficially third party. I think that's when they finally figured out this is the early days of game consoles. It was like it'd be like Thomas Edison. He says, "Okay, well, they want all the movies on the Edison label." So basically, Atari, I think they had one lone programmer making Pac-Man for the Atari 2600, which was not up to snuff, obviously, with the arcade, but sometimes the Atari 2600 pull off some good things. Like Wizard of War, I thought was a very good version on that console. I've seen let's plays of it. Even the Ms. Pac-Man they made for it later on, not graphically, it's not as good as the arcade, but it's still playable and it looks fun. But the Pac-Man,
probably the biggest downside for me on Pac-Man was, So this is the first time that I can play it with any regularity to start getting good, get through levels. Because I'm doing it in the privacy of my own home. I don't have to feed quarters in, right? Well, the problem is that one of the features in Pac-Man was, I think it was after 3 levels, there was an intermission. And that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see those intermissions.
Those little cartoons, yeah, they were from the arcade game, yeah.
And that wasn't on the home console.
Sucks.
Yeah, these days all of that kind of stuff is there. You know, if you get Mortal Kombat on whatever console you play it on, you get all of those fatalities and all that kind of stuff just like on the video game.
Well, it's funny because I remember for the Sega Genesis, though, Captain America and the Avengers came out for it. That was based on the arcade game, but my brother wouldn't buy it because it didn't have the cool intro where you have the Red Skull is assembling his armies, and Captain America and Iron Man and Hawkeye have to stop the Red Skull. And it was a really cool arcade intro, but it wasn't really included with the home version, so he got annoyed by that. So, but
and there was also some really shit games on there. There was that E.T. game, and there was
that's legendary.
That was just horrible. There was the the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was almost exactly the same game, but I think it was slightly better.
As E.T.?
Kinda, yeah. It had very similar backgrounds and definitely the same perspective. But honestly, if you wanted to pretend to be Indiana Jones, the better one to play, Pitfall.
Pitfall I had on the Atari 800, but I think the 2600 version is very similar.
Yep.
That was a neat one. I wasted a lot of hours on that growing up. You got to swing across bottomless pits, and then you'd have the pits that would come in and out, and then there'd be the
alligators. And you could jump on the alligators' heads, but if you'd have to stand on just behind their eyes, because if you stood over their mouth, you'd get swallowed. Yeah.
And then if you go down, I don't know why you would go underground, but you have to watch out for the scorpion. Remember that?
Oh, I do remember the scorpion. Definitely had to jump over him. You couldn't. There was no way. You didn't have a gun or anything like that.
For those of you who may have, of course, now I'm dating myself. If you ever got Pitfall: The Mine Adventure for the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, there's a special thing where you run into like a pixelated scorpion. If you jump on it in the game, it gives you the 2600 Pitfall you can play through in the 16-bit with the advanced animations.
Cool.
That was neat. It was a neat little extra feature.
That is really cool. I love that kind of stuff. That's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, back in the day, though, I'm telling you, it was a little nuts, though. But remember Superman and Spider-Man Atari games back in the day? Did you play either of those?
I did play Superman. A buddy of mine had that one. It was okay. It wasn't great. I did not ever even see the Spider-Man one. That one I don't know. Yeah.
I've seen commercials for it. You can watch all the old Atari commercials, and you have this. They have the Green Goblin. He looks creepy in the commercial, and he's tormenting Spider-Man. You'll never get to the top of the building and stop me. And see the Green Goblin on the Atari version throwing pumpkin bombs at him and stuff. And it's there is no saving in those original games. Skipper Kenner says, "Yeah,
that is true. That is very true. You were playing on a cartridge. You could not save and come back to it, and that was, the best place to see why that matters is in the movie Big. I think it was Big.
Yes.
Where the kid is playing the video game and his mother wants him to take out the garbage right now. Mom, no, I'm in the middle of, I don't care. There was no pause button.
Nope.
There was no saving, and that was killer,
Yeah, and that was fascinating. Big's a movie we should do a rewatch of sometime.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But great Tom Hanks performance. But yeah, you're right. And he was playing one of those old school. It looked like an old school adventure game, right? Like on the old computers that they had, and he was trying to figure out how to stop the frost giant or something. It was some fantasy game. But people on here, people never had an Atari. Well, there's a news story later that might interest you. Okay, but my uncle bought an Intellivision at our house in the 80s so we could play it. That thing was expensive too. Yeah, Pete, you have to understand.
That came out a little bit after the Atari 2600, and that was the what do you call it? The platform wars, right? Like there was VHS and beta, and there was Blu-ray and HD. This was
yeah. In television, there was the Magnavox Odyssey. We had a Magnavox Odyssey at our house. That was like a a competitor for the Atari. I think it was slightly better technology, though. I think it could do some things that the Atari couldn't do, though. But
But
Atari got mad. Yeah.
like these days, there's games that you can get on multiple platforms. Back then, you could not. It was, you got Atari, you got these games. You play in television, you get these games. There were some that were different versions, and if you compare the versions, some were definitely better than others. That's true.
Those arcades had their teen rules in place. No one complained when someone snack orders. We just went to
Yep.
the. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like playground rules, right?
Yeah.
Finn's Arcade. Yeah, actually, if you want a neat little glimpse of the arcade scene, watch the movie Tron, the arcade scene in that in the beginning of the movie.
Oh,
That's
yeah. That's right. Oh, that was another. I always wished that one came out on Atari. The Tron arcade game.
Tron has been hard to find. Like they didn't do a ton of home conversions of that. I
No,
think
they
when they
didn't.
released like the Tron sequel video game that was not based on that was before Tron Legacy came out. They included the arcade games in it. I had the yeah, it was called Tron Killer App. That's what it was called, and I had it for the Game Boy Advance, and it had the old arcade games in that version. But yeah, they haven't really.
I used to play Berserk and pretend that it was Tron because those
That's
robots kind of looked like
similar.
yeah.
Remember, they supposedly buried the unsold ET cartridges. That was an urban
Not only
legend for a
supposedly,
while.
no,
But
that
no, it
actually
happened. It
it
happened.
actually
Yes, yes.
turned out to be true, and there's
Yeah.
some videos online you can look up about it. It's very very interesting.
They made
Um,
so many of those things. I think they had more ET cartridges than consoles available. That's how many of them they made. And it was a horrible game. That's all I heard
It
about it.
really was. And honestly, it's one of those things you hear about certain games and certain toys being destroyed, and you're like, no, I would have bought them. No. Nobody was going to buy those ET games, honestly. And if ET is available on an emulator out there right now on the internet, it's not worth the bandwidth to download it.
Oh man, Atari Twenty Center was my first console. Got it second half from my brother. Frogger and Pac-Man were the games I enjoyed. You know, I never got into Frogger.
So I loved Frogger, and my mom and I, sometimes separately, would play it for hours. And I got really good with that. I mean, so good that it was like how I held the joystick and I manipulated the. Remember, the joysticks are not like on the Nintendos and stuff like that where you just did them with your thumbs. It was a big joystick, but I still used my thumb on top of that because I could move it so quickly, and I got really good. Up, and I'll tell you, when you went splat fast and hard.
I have
Tim
Tim
Lapetio's
Art of Atari book if you guys want to flip through sometime. Yeah, I don't know if is that the one where they show all the cover art from the games in there, or is that something else? Because I know that they made a book of all the cover art from the Atari games, which was pretty neat.
I think it might be. Yeah, some of the cover art was really, really good. Absolutely.
Green Goblin was scarier in those Hostess ads and comic books than he was.
I
in the
remember those Hostess ads. Yes, I do.
The Atari game I was scarier than the Green Goblin helmet in the 2022 Spider-Man film.
Well, yeah.
Well, I have to say I love the 2002 Spider-Man movie, but I don't like that helmet. I think it's dumb. And you have William Dafoe as your actor. Just put the green makeup on it. He's the Green Goblin. I mean, I'm sorry. He can do creep, you know, if he wants to.
So David Pensek is saying, how many of you geezers remember the handheld game Merlin?
Why does that ring a bell?
Yeah, that's tickling a fuzzy memory with me, and I can't quite remember it. I
think I had a cousin that had it.
Yeah,
I know I must have played it because it rings a bell, and I think I was impressed with it at the time. I remember Simon. It was an interesting age, those early computer days. But before we head off, though, I do want to mention one thing. What did you think of the Atari controller?
Okay, I'll tell you, for all the abuse that I put that thing through, it held up pretty damn well. And even when it wasn't doing so well, it was actually very easy to service. You could take that thing apart and you could go in and, you know, it gave you 360 movement, but when you open it up and look inside, it was just a 4-point pressure thing, you know, and it would react based on up, down, left, right, and diagonal. like pressing up and right was upright, diagonal. It was very impressive analog at the time, and one button is all it was. And it was so versatile that my 2600 joysticks, I continued to use them even after I wasn't playing Atari anymore because I could plug them into my Commodore
computer. Yeah, they would work on the computer. It's funny. One guy I watch online, the guy that runs Classic Game Room, he would do videos, and he would often say, "There's nothing better than playing Atari with a Sega Genesis controller because the Sega Genesis controller had the same hookup. You understand?
Oh,
the same
did
endpoint.
it? I did not know that.
You could hook. You can even buy new Sega Genesis controllers that are officially licensed. If you add an old Atari, you want to play them with the Genesis controller, you can hook them up. And the guy said it was smoother controls than the Atari controller. I don't think I had the official Atari controller, so maybe I shouldn't be picking on it. But the one I had on the computer, the 8-bit computer, I'm telling you, it was just, I don't know, it was a little rough on the hands, man. It wasn't until years later, I think, Nintendo came up with the D-pad for the NES controller, and that kind of revolutionized.
Yeah. See, I also had there was a secondary market one that was more of a. It was obviously the same kind of joystick, but it was bigger and it had the feel of like a flight simulator type joystick, which I love, and it had the button on the top on the thumb, which was fun for some games, but I liked the original Atari 2600 control. Joker voice, thanks, Mr. J, coming to wish me a happy birthday.
Talk about Atari.
We're talking about Atari, and as long as we're here with the birthday wishes, I think I saw that Zootopia is celebrating his birthday tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday!
And there's some other people in the community that have birthdays coming up. I know that Leia Plus Size is on the 15th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in fact, Wolf 10 Media's birthday is today as well.
Oh, happy birthday, Wolf 10, if you're listening. Yeah.
Or if you listen on the rewatch or whatever.
But I'm trying to think what else. But the Atari 2600, though, still a legend. We are going to have some news later that may interest you if you never had a chance. Recently, though, they did release the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection, which everybody is screaming and praising, saying it's basically a collection of Atari games made for modern consoles and PC. And it has all the arcades games on it, 2600 games. Not, of course, the licensed ones where you had to go to Nintendo or Namco. Which is a pity. I kind of wish that they would make a deal and put those on something. We could.
Right?
But it did had a large collection. It even had some Lynx games and some what do you call it? Atari Jaguar games.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what the Atari Jaguar is?
I don't think so.
It was their last attempt at a console. The Lynx was their first attempt at a portable, which for the time was very advanced. My brother had one, and it was actually a 16-bit color console. When it came out, it didn't have the greatest resolution, but they figured they didn't have to because it was a portable.
Yeah.
But it was it sucked the battery life, though. That's the thing. Nintendo won those portable wars because Nintendo understood it's not about the graphics or the backlighting. It's about how long do the batteries last. And they were right.
That's
what
much
make
true.
You win. Yeah.
And you know what? I think in the future we're going to have to do a good old days about those handheld electronic games.
The early ones? That's an idea.
And I don't even mean the what was that one, the Game Boy with the cartridges?
No.
I mean,
I know what you mean.
That.
We're gonna do that, yeah. Well, it's funny. The year I got the NES, I also got a pinball one of those. It looked like a pinball table. It was really nifty, actually.
Oh wow! Yeah.
All right, but what you sipping on, by the way?
Well, I just finished off. I told you I was having some stomach problems. I just finished off a ginger beer, but now I'm on just a bubbly. A grapefruit soda.
That's good. Get a bubbly soda.
I got to work tomorrow, so I can't. That's why I had my drink on Friday. Couldn't do that today.
So here we go. We unfortunately have a couple in remembrances. We're not going to spend too much time on these. Not that they're not worth spending time on. We just have so much to do. But Ed Boon.
Yeah.
Earl Bowen. Okay. Well, I butchered that.
Okay.
Actor from
I knew who you meant, but
the
then
Terminator movies.
Yep.
And you may recognize him. He was the Shrink, Sarah Connor's Shrink in Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And he was bugging Kyle Reese. Okay. Earl Bowen, the busy character actor best known for his stint as criminal psychologist Peter Silberman in the Terminator film franchise, died Thursday in Hawaii. His daughter told The Hollywood Reporter he was 81. Ruby Harbin said her dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in November and died quietly in his sleep. Born on August 8th, 1941, Bowen amassed dozens of credits during his career. In 1984, he landed his most notable role as Dr. Silberman in James Cameron's Terminator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and Michael Biehn. He reprised his role in Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. So yeah, he was the guy who the only one in the police station that survived, because I think he left the building before Arnold walked in. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny, he shows up in Terminator 2 and he's running the
institution.
The institution, not insane asylum. We don't call those anymore, because we
Heck,
words become pejoratives, then they end up throwing them out, even though
honestly,
they
we
originally
don't even have those institutions anymore. We got nothing for mental health these days.
Oh my word! Unfortunately, you're right. 2023 has gotten off to a deleted scenes. I know, it's just, we'll see.
Yeah.
I think I'm hoping that at some point a lot of this woke nonsense is going to go away. I think a lot of it was being funded by those companies that were heavily invested in that crypto nonsense. But for now,
we'll be talking more about that. But yeah,
we're still dealing with the aftermath of that, though. So it's going to be a while before we get rid of it. Other actor who died, Adam Rich, who starred in the enormous hit 8 Is Enough, has died, TMZ has learned. Family member tells TMZ Adam died Saturday in his LA area home. The family member would not reveal the cause of death, but a law enforcement source tells TMZ someone came to his home and found him lifeless. Law enforcement source adds this was not foul play. Adam played Nicolas Bradford, the youngest son on 8 Is Enough. The series ran from 1977 to 1981. He had other credits as well, including Code Red in 1981 and Dungeons & Dragons in 1983. Adam made VH1's list of greatest 100 kids stars, coming in at number 73. Who was that? The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon series?
I think so. Yeah.
Is that what they're talking about? Okay, because I don't think there's anything else D&D related from that time.
And yeah, because that voice of his, I always thought that was him on that cartoon. But I'll tell you, you take a look at that article. He still has, at 54, he still looks like he's got that baby face, I mean, he was 2 years older than me, and yet, he always looked like that same child actor that I remember from the 70s. God, and I love that show. I watched every single episode of that show.
Died suddenly. Well, they're not saying. They said it was not homicide, I think. That's what they were saying. So, or is that the other guy they said wasn't?
Well, anyway. Netter and I were talking about that today. At this point, everybody, you're just assuming, died suddenly, and what that means when you don't have. But unfortunately, and I don't know if the family's not saying, the next most common after the, in quotes, died suddenly is tends to be self-deletion. We were talking about that a lot last year. So you never know.
I know it's not a fun time to be alive, but please talk to someone. Yeah. There's hotlines you can talk to.
Every day is precious,
Yes.
And it there's always the potential for things to get better. Just remember that.
So next on, we're going to talk about the Wednesday news. Now, we haven't really talked about Wednesday really at all in the stream, have we?
No, we haven't. And
I haven't watched it, to be fair.
So much news, and I'm sorry, I'm falling behind. I'll get these for you, Boomer.
What are you doing?
I know. I
need to yell at you on your birthday. I'm
slacking on my birthday. But we're going to go through some of these quickly because the news was so rapid fired this week on Wednesday, not on Wednesday the day, Wednesday the topic, that some of it is no longer the case. It's old and past, and we're on to resolution on it.
Wednesday reportedly could move to Prime Video for season 2. Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to read one paragraph from this article. Latest word on season 2 of Wednesday is that the series is in danger of leaving Netflix due to issues with the Addams Family rights. Yeah, I think the whole thing is that Prime, Amazon owns MGM, right, and they own Addams Family, right? So there
Yeah.
we go. It's going to go. Go post the next one. I'll read a little
Yeah.
more from that. Are you
Yeah.
guys tense?
Yeah. Oh no, what's going to happen? Then there was discussion in the community like, "Oh my gosh, maybe it won't get renewed. Maybe we won't get another season because of all this rights related blah 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 blah."
Yeah, Netflix. I don't know which one. Okay, this must be the second one. Yeah, that was what got this covered. Netflix has been on a rampage recently when it comes to canceling hugely popular fantasy shows. With no less than 14 having been axed in the last year and a half. Throughout it all, Wednesday seemed like the one project that was safe from the chopping block. But a deliciously ironic twist could be on the
A little
cards.
bit of salt there. We got this covered.
Yeah. Fresh from the scooping a pair of the Golden Globe nominations for Best TV Series and Best Actress in the musical or comedy categories, the unstoppable Addams Family juggernaut that became one of the streaming service's most popular original shows of all time is undoubtedly one of the biggest properties Netflix has at its disposal. And yet, a juicy report offers that not only could rights issues be the reason behind the wait for an official renewal announcement, but Prime Video could swoop in and take Wednesday for itself in what would be an on demand coup of the century, without a shadow of a doubt. Let's go to the next article.
Yep, yep. But lo and behold, dun dun dun.
Wednesday officially renewed for season 2 at Netflix.
Yeah.
And we were wondering, it's like, oh, I think we were speculating. I was like, we're even going to do these articles now. We're like, let's do all three. And like,
Yeah, I said
well,
let's at least mention it. This is what
think
happened
Netflix
this week.
came out and said, get that trailer out there for season 2. Well, it's about time. Wednesday has been renewed for a second season by Netflix after speculation about the hit show's fate. The streamers confirmed the Goth mystery series will return for another round. It's been incredible to create a show that is connected with people across the world, said showrunners Alfred Goh and Miles Miller in a statement. Thrilled to continue Wednesday's torturous journey into season 2. We can't wait to dive headfirst into another season, explore the kooky, spooky world of Nevermore. Just need to make sure Wednesday hasn't emptied the pool first.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And one thing I'll say is when I heard all this, okay, first I wasn't going to jump into this because, look, I'm not jumping into any new series because the first speculation is, okay, how woke is this going to be? What are they going to do with this? Blah, 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 right? Then when it came out, there was still some, oh, what are they doing with Gomez? What are they doing with Pugsley? Da, 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 da. Oh, this is just kind of a ripoff of Harry Potter, which we'll be talking more about Harry Potter coming up. But, it sounded like everyone was enjoying it. So I was like, okay, hey, maybe this is something worth checking out. But we've only got one season. Let me wait and see where it goes. Then they started talking about whether or not it was going to be renewed for a second season because of rights things. And I was like, you know what? It's just like, something good and there's not going to be a second season. This is why I wait, So now let's see what happens with season 2 before I actually get into this thing. But
Netflix can be hit or miss on shows. Witcher, Blood Origin, cough, cough. But I hear people like this new show.
And I was, yes, there is the poor writing on some shows, the woke bullshit, all that kind of stuff. But there's another element that a lot of people don't talk about, and unfortunately, I can't tell you off the top of my head which YouTube channel it was that I was watching that was talking about this. But there is a level of diminishing returns for Netflix too, with some of their popular ones, even when they're doing well. Once they get past the 3-season mark, the question becomes, is it profitable for them? And this is why good shows like what's it called, Stranger Things, the fact that it's held out as long as it has is like, oh, Netflix, don't screw over the fans on this, because it can be costly to make these shows. And are they really valuable when you get to your third season and your actors are starting to ask for more money and things like that? It becomes a diminishing returns question for
You
them.
want to
So
get
that's
them
why some
signed
of these
up,
shows, this is why some of those shows end up going away, because it's like they can't really afford them. And then they start to, in quotes, cheap out because they got to make their money too, right? But then the show starts to suffer because of it. Gosh,
That happened with
it's business.
that happened with Stumptown. Did you know Stumptown was considered a hit show when it aired, but then the pandemic happens and they didn't want to, and they kept pushing off the shooting schedule, and they're like, you know what, forget it. They canceled it because of that.
And I kind of
Yeah.
understand that. When you lose momentum, there's that
Yeah.
element too. So, I mean, yeah, you can bitch and moan all you want about those damn greedy companies, but you know what? Those damn greedy
Money
companies
talks.
go out of business if they're not making profit. So, you know, you gotta wait. You gotta balance those scales.
Did they race swap the hand? It'd be funny. They could, you know what? Just make the hand green. Just make thing green, right?
Well, here's the
That way,
thing
no
about,
one's upset.
I've been very. I mean, I have not seen a single episode. Just full disclosure, so I can't speak authoritatively to the show. But the clips that I've seen and whatnot, I am very intrigued by what they've done with Thing, the stitching and stuff to make it look like a kind of a I don't know, zombie Frankensteinish kind of homage. I kind of dig that. Something else that I found very interesting, that did you know that the actor, I'm going to call him an actor, who is playing the role of that hand,
Yeah.
is he's a dancer, just like the original actor that played in the movies, the previous movies.
Was a dancer as well.
Was a dancer as well, and he's acting through like a pantomime, right? He is acting, right? Do you know who played the Thing in the original TV show?
No.
Ted Cassidy. It was Lurch.
Huh.
Which was a challenge for him because he was a big guy and he'd have to get under tables and whatnot and contort. And there were times when he had to be on screen as Lurch, like, for example, playing the harpsichord, and someone else would have to fill in for him and play Thing because he had to come up through in front of him while he was playing. Yeah, he couldn't do both. But, yeah. Just a little bit of what do you call it, trivia that you might be interested in. And I also, and I'll do it again, I dropped the link for those of you that want to go and check out the official trailer for season 2. You can. The announcement trailer, or whatever you want to call it. Teaser trailer or whatever. Hey, Mr. Matchstick, how you doing, my friend? Mr. Matchstick, if I'm not mistaken, also has a either I missed it or is coming up.
A birthday
on the 21st. It's coming up, so happy birthday to Mr. Matchstick as well. All these January birthdays that I've been keeping track of. So
Stumptown was fine, but deviated from the source material. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I mean, there was woke stuff on Stumptown as well, but it had a
honestly,
I had a good lead actress.
That doesn't surprise me, but I don't even know what the hell a Stumptown is or what the source material.
She was a bounty hunter, I think, or was she a private eye? I don't remember now. Private eye. No, she was a private eye. That's right. She was getting her license to be a private eye. Yep, Mr. Matchstick does have a birthday. Well, happy birthday. Okay. So
are we going into Warner Brothers?
Let's move along, please. Let's move along.
Get it going. That's what you're
Dead
saying?
dog tired. Warner Brothers
Bear
Discovery.
with me because unfortunately this is one of those ones that
Boo!
Because it's so long. These give me a second. I am not real good with the copy. Headline? I know, I'm sorry, with the copy and the paste. There's the headline, and I'll get the link up in just a second.
Warner Brothers CFO Hollywood
because we always want to cite our sources.
With spending frenzy, you think?
I have to take this as this is another one of those ones where I said it myself. And
I'm still waiting for that Rose Tico series we were promised or rumored. Remember?
Dude, I'm not even going to pat myself on the back for this. Valiant Renegade was out there saying this. Midnight's Edge was saying this. And I'm sure a lot of you guys that have your own YouTube channels have probably been talking about this too. You need to be profitable. And a lot of these studios that were trying to, and I understand, maybe they took a loss up front because they were trying to get people to sign up to their subscription services. But we have been saying for a long time, there are diminishing returns, and there is a limit to the number of people that are going to subscribe to you. You know, there's a limit, right? And you know, people can't afford to subscribe to Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney Plus and Paramount, whatever the fuck they call it.
Do you remember early on when Warner Brothers, they had their DC streaming, and then they had HBO Plus, HBO Now, HBO Max, and I think they were all
and
running.
Everybody was saying, roll these into one. Nobody is going to subscribe to all of them, you dumbasses.
Okay, and if 2022 was a year of restructuring for Warner Brothers Discovery, then 2023 will be a year of relaunching and rebuilding, WBD CFO Gunnar Weidenfels said Thursday morning. Speaking at a Citibank conference, the executive also signaled that the company's moves in the content space, removing old titles from HBO Max and canceling some shows, are likely to be copied from competitors in the space, and that pricing for streaming services will rise as companies pursue profitability over reach. On the content side, Weidenfels dismissed the noise around the company's content write-downs and cancellations, calling it a reflection of an industry that went overboard, that went on a spending frenzy, noting that they rectified a lot of that content exuberance, and I would call it. There was a lot of thinking, you know, let's do more, not necessarily let's do the exact right things. Let's do what works, he added. We have the ability, the benefit to be Monday morning quarterbacks here. Indeed, he noted that we are done with that chapter with regard to the purchase accounting that led the company to write down some $2.8 billion to $3.5 billion in content and development costs. Instead, he predicts that other companies in the space will follow WBD's Warner Brothers Discovery footsteps in how it approaches content. While he stopped short of predicting that content spend has peaked, he did say we shaved off a lot of the excess last year. And I think that's something that everyone else in the industry is going to go through. We're coming from an irrational time of overspending with very limited focus on return on investment. I think others are going to have to make adjustments that we frankly have behind us now, the executive says. We have every intention to continue spending. Content is the lifeblood of this company, he added. It's obviously a hit-driven business. You will win some, you will lose some. But if you look at the creative lineup that David Zaslav has been able to assemble, this is the first flight lineup of creative talent. I don't know what that means, but
well, let me. Okay, no, I'm glad you paused there. Let me kind of explain what he's saying. I think he's saying he should be saying if he's not, and that's it takes money to make money. They're not going to not invest in shows, but what I hear there, and tell me if this doesn't sound like what I think he's saying, is the cream rises to the top, right? If you're going to put an investment in, it's got to be a hit. It's got to be good. It's got to be something that fans want to see.
Not Westworld Season 5.
Or what do you call it? Game of Thrones. You know, I mean, it's got to be Game of Thrones early on, not Game of Thrones the way they ended it. Quality has to be there. Quality counts. And they're not going to keep throwing good money after bad. They're not going to be doing Willow. They're not going to be doing, the Power Rings or whatever it was called. It's got to be good, or they're not going to do it. It is not worth the investment for them.
The Halo TV series,
honestly, and we are talking about Warner Brothers, so we are talking about the DC brand, right? Skipper Kenner jokes, tongue in cheek, saying, you can't improve on the Lego Batman movie. I know he enjoyed the Lego Batman movie. He got me to watch it, and he wasn't wrong. in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, it was very, very good. But I'll go even further with that, Skipper Kenner. Keep an eye on Mr. Matchstick's channel in the coming weeks and months, where we will be talking about more of the animated features that have come out of DC, that are really worth checking out, as I'm finding out. But yes, thank you. Hello and welcome, Gorilla Random Thoughts. A great up-and-coming channel. I'm glad that Deleted Scenes dropped the link for him. Check him out. I think that's a channel that's got some great future, and I'm glad to see him in the community hanging out with us. But Zootopia is not wrong here. Streaming is turning out to be a new revenue problem. It is cost effectiveness problem. And I'm going to tell you something else. We hinted at it with Warner Brothers, saying they were way behind on combining HBO Max and their stupid DC separated streaming whatever, and all of their other content into one. And my prediction is that going forward, I think what we're going to start seeing more of is streaming as the new cable going forward. I think we're going to start seeing some partnerships start happening. I don't know if it's going to be through.
Well, we've already had it with HBO and Discovery right now.
True,
yeah,
true. But I would go even further and to say maybe what we need to see is more of what what's it called? Sony, who does not have their own streaming service, licensing out their products to other companies. I think we're going to start seeing more of that kind of thing, and it's
we're already seeing it with Sony and Amazon with the Spider-Man, the Spider-Verse series.
Or maybe what we used to see with the DVD what do you call it? DVD rentals through Netflix. Maybe Netflix becomes the streaming licensee, and you go and you subscribe to Netflix, and you get your, whoever they're licensed with, and you want to see. Disney is the one that I've been saying all along. They are missing the boat here. They have the content. They should just put it all out there. You subscribe to Disney Plus, and you should be getting all of the Disney catalog. You should get all the Lucasfilm catalog, the Marvel catalog, the 20th Century Fox catalog. It should all be there, and it's not. But Disney has dumbasses with no business intelligence running there. It's like they got children running Disney over there. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking over there.
What was Willow? What's the cost of Willow the series? They say over $100 million for that show.
Way more than it had any right to, and it's not bringing in any subscribers. All it's doing is pissing off their fans, just like every other Lucasfilm Limited treatise that they've had. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking of.
Okay, but I know that Warner Brothers just seems to be. I know that Zaslav, didn't he call the previous people running Warner Brothers idiots? I think he mentioned that in an interview.
Yeah, and David says, you mean what the original Netflix was? Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Look, everybody's talking about content. Look, that is money you already spent. If you are not providing a means for people to see it, it is money wasted. That is free to you. And I'm talking Disney, right? Everything in the 20th Century catalog, everything in the Lucas catalog, everything in the Marvel catalog. And I mean everything. Okay? I mean the original Star Wars. I mean the holiday friggin' special. I mean everything. I don't care if it's good or bad. Put it out there. It has value. Because it's free to you. You own it. Make it a part of your library. But no, you are still operating under the 1980s Disney Vault concept, which never made any damn sense. This artificial scarcity that never actually worked out in reality for you, Disney. It still doesn't work. You haven't learned your friggin' lesson after 40 years.
Disney Plus won't peak until they add Condor Man. Is that a Marvel character? Condor Man?
I have no idea, but there's probably some truth in the jokes that he makes, honestly.
Next article. No transition.
And David is saying, you're bordering on a birthday rant here. Yes, I don't think I'm bordering on it.
There are rants to come. Don't worry on that.
I am absolutely ranting. There is no doubt about what I'm doing here. But you're right. We should move on. This one is probably going to trigger some people, but let's
go ahead and paste it in there.
Let's keep our wits about us, because there's only so much that we know here. Let's
Zootopia, I would want to see the original theatrical release of Star Wars. Let me explain something to you. It makes no sense why, now that Disney owns Star Wars, they can't just put remastered editions of the original theatrical trilogy.
Unless, let me throw out an unless.
What unless?
Unless Disney doesn't actually own the rights to the original Star Wars. That might still be owned by George himself.
Here's the issue. This is what I had learned years back. I had learned that Lucasfilm had rights to home video releases of the original versions of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but that Star Wars A New Hope, the home video rights, or at least they'd have to share in them, belong to 20th Century Fox. Well, that seems to be an easy problem solved, since now they own 20th Century Fox. But I'd heard another rumor that it was like a handshake thing with George Lucas, that they would never release the theatrical versions, which doesn't make any sense because they've done everything else to dishonor his legacy. So why would they care about releasing the theatrical versions, even to making them like a bonus feature on one of the Blu-ray discs?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they haven't, but they don't know what they're doing. Because I thought for sure.
On the other hand, and I'm going to undermine what I just said, we are talking about Disney here. So if maybe they do have the rights to it, and just like everything else in their catalog, they're being dumbasses, and they're holding on to stuff that they really ought to be releasing. I don't know.
The CG Jabba the Hutt from the special edition holds up pretty well, don't you think?
Well, whether it does or not, again, it's content. It exists. It's out there. Give the fans the access to it. And, they need to subscribe to you to get it. Fine. Put it out there and give them the choice to see it.
Harry Potter movie reboot in the works at Warner Brothers after Fantastic Beasts failure. This is a rumor, but we're going to talk about it.
Well, it's a rumor, but let's put the caveat on, and I put this stuff in the thumbnail to be a little bit clickbaity, but let's be very clear. When we say reboot, what does that mean? That could mean a lot of things, and we don't know. So let's not make assumptions that aren't the actual case.
Let's read.
Yeah.
Over the last 20 years, Warner Brothers' Wizarding World movie franchise has grossed almost $10 billion worldwide. However, following the 8 Harry Potter movies based on J.K. Rowling's best-selling books, the Fantastic Beasts prequels films she penned since have not garnered the same success. Now, over a decade on, since Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 was released, and a new report claims that the studio is ready to reboot the original set of films much earlier than fans had initially anticipated. Back in November, Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav pointed out how profitable the original Harry Potter movies had been for the studio and how he plans to focus on franchises in the future. Now, known leaker WDW Pro, we know that person, right?
I'm sorry, I was laughing at. I was laughing at what Mr. Matchstick said. It's not on topic, but it is humorous. Disney should give us a build your own Star Wars edition where you can switch around all the changes from the special editions and get what you want.
I'd keep the Biggs conversation with Luke and Biggs. I keep that.
Not wrong. He is not wrong, because there is a lot of content out there that is stupid. It's interesting from a it existed nostalgia kind of thing, but like you said, the Tashi station, the fixing the evaporator and watching the space battle and stuff, it doesn't work from a narrative standpoint. It's the kind of stuff, like from DVD extras standpoint, you see the DVD extras and you go, yeah, I understand why they dropped that. It's interesting that it existed, but it was boring, and it slowed down the pace, and yeah, those scenes didn't need to exist, but still throw them on the DVD for archival reasons, so that they still exist. I'm gonna give a little tip of the hat to another YouTuber, Fanzine, who's always talking about things like television edits of things and international edits of things. There are sometimes added scenes that are interesting, right? Deleted scenes, and I don't mean deleted scenes, who's in the chat working so hard dropping all the links, but I mean these deleted scenes that are interesting, that may not be necessary to see to enjoy the film, but it's interesting to know that they existed. Give them to the fans.
Okay. But I still thought the insert of the big scene in the special edition worked. I think showing that Luke had a friend in the rebellion, and then when his friend gets killed in the Death Star run, I think it adds a little more gravity to that run. I think that was actually a good...
But the Tashi station scenes in their entirety aren't necessary.
No, don't put those in there. But I thought the one scene with them
just like the Jabba the Hutt, which we were joking about a little while ago, wasn't necessary, because all the information from that we already got from the Greedo scenes, without the McClunky.
Oh, the Greedo
which I also joke about, but throw that in there too. You created it; it's out there. Put that out there too.
Do you remember when Han shot first was the only thing we had to complain about? Remember those salad days?
There are like 42 different versions of that damn scene, because they can't leave it the fuck alone. But as Mr. Magic said, put it on there as DVD extras and let us choose our own adventure if we want to.
He had the gun pointed at him. It's okay that he shot first. It's all right.
Yeah.
He's not a white knight.
Because let me tell you something else. If you miss at that close a range, what the hell is wrong with you? You have no business being in that, business.
I know Lucas later on changed it so they shoot at each other at the same time, but then Greedo, never mind. It makes no sense. Leave it alone.
Skipper Kenner, too. Just give us the implied hot and heavy I think that might be a typo, and let's just assume it was. Luke had for Leia in Splinter of the Mind's Eye, so we can keep every film a kiss your sister version. Exactly.
Star Trek doesn't have these problems. Anyway, let's move on.
I do think that's very memeable, though, because you got the, Luke kissed his sister, and then you got the Game of Thrones. Oh, that's so cute.
WDW Pro said, I know Game of Thrones.
Luke and Leia have nothing on the Lannisters.
That was the first episode, yes.
Yep,
okay,
yep.
WDW Pro said on Valiant Renegade, it now seems extremely likely that the Harry Potter universe, which I think internally is called the Wizarding Division, is receiving a reboot in the future in terms of the movies. And that may also include recasting some of the roles that have become iconic inside the Harry Potter universe with the major actors and characters.
Good.
We're not talking about Fantastical Beasts. We're not talking about some of these ancillary Harry Potter things. We're talking about what is referred to inside the industry as core Harry Potter. Valiant Renegade added, you're looking at the original cast, Harry, Hermione, Ron, new cast, starting over. Yet according to the original leaker, it may not be quite as simple as a straightforward reboot. WDW Pro concluded the way that they reboot this franchise does not have to be your standard fare reboot, where we go back to the origin of the character we've already had an adventure with. There are many different ways they could do that, and we're not here to tell you that we know what it is yet. They're not even close. I would think to it being at that point. In fact, according to the source, they don't have sort of the James Gunn new code of DC Studios individual yet in charge of this. That's part of what they're aiming for. The pair then went on to discuss why Warner Brothers would be rebooting, especially after the disappointing box office of the most recent Fantastic Beasts films in comparison to Daniel Radcliffe-led originals. Valiant Renegade claimed they feel like perhaps the original Harry Potter fandom is kind of aging out, and they want to revitalize or refresh this or make something new to drive new audiences to theaters. That's all well and good. They're forgetting one thing. J.K. Rowling is still alive and well with us.
Yeah.
She's the George Lucas of Harry Potter, but she didn't give up the rights to Harry Potter. She has a creative. She must maintain some creative control over what happens there. So she would have to sign off on this.
And to some degree, even if she didn't, she still receives the royalties. She still makes the money. And I'm sorry, all of you, blue-haired land whales that hate her because you don't agree with her politics or beliefs or whatever. Nobody gives a damn. If you want the Harry Potter, shot of dopamine, you're gonna pay her one way or the other. She gets the money. You don't like it, then, create your own stuff.
I predict they'll start with Harry's parents as teens. Oh, do the prequel story about before he's born, all that?
He's probably right. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing. Prequels are not necessarily the way to go. That way leads to disaster.
With the prequels. I was about to make
a
joke.
But there is plenty of future stories that they could also be doing. Harry gets older, has kids, they have future generations. Just do the stories. Go ahead and do it. That's perfectly okay.
See, he was trying to do stuff that took place in the Wizarding world. And I'll say this, for all the problems with Fantastic Beasts, there's good world building there.
There is an element there. Again, because it's prequel stuff, I think that's always a road to disaster. But, there is stories to be told in the United States. There's stories to be told in other countries that have wizards, right? The real world versus the wizarding world. There are stories there to be told.
Yeah. I don't know. I suppose. So
that is kind of funny too, David. Harry learns that even with magic, it doesn't help with his ED. That's all right. There is something to be said there.
That's good. You're not hearing any background noise, as far as I'm concerned, right?
If there's any background noise on your side, it's not anything that's bothering.
You're not hearing it. Okay, all right.
And you know what? There is one thing. This is a little off topic, but it relates to every YouTuber. Let's deal with the fact that there may occasionally be background noise and get the F over it. I hear it from, I don't care if it's Viva Fry or if it's Casually Comics or whatever. Yes, this is what happens, okay? Deal with it. We're not in quotes professionals. We don't always have the budget to
we don't have a
soundproof our rooms and stuff. And you know what? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Everybody has stuff going on in the background and sirens and whatever. Oh well, it happens. So we move on.
You know what I found interesting about that article though? Is the fact that basically the original fans are kind of being kicked to the curb.
Well,
the millennial fans are like, you guys are done. It's like they've always been the focal point of the attention.
I do want to say something, and I think Zootopia is bringing up something that I did feel relates to this article, and we didn't touch on, and we should address. He says rebooting Harry Potter is ridiculous. They may be aging out, but the current generation can watch it on video. Here's the thing, and I think this goes back to something that I was referring. I've referred to a video that Retroblasting did about Indiana Jones. We have got to get away from this idea that these characters must be played by the actors that we have first saw them in, for a number of reasons. Indiana Jones does not always have to be Harrison Ford. Okay, we've had many iterations of younger iterations of Indiana Jones, whether it's River Phoenix or, you know, the character, the kids that played him in the TV shows, the old man that narrates the, you know, the old Indy from the young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah. River Phoenix played the younger
The
version,
idea was always meant to be that Indiana Jones was supposed to be like James Bond, where you can change who the actor is. And yes, Bond is an example of how this works. Actually, Conan was also supposed to be that too. It wasn't always supposed to have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. It could be other characters playing this role. You know who it is. Let's continue telling the stories and continue on. Because you have a couple problems. One, does the franchise die when, for example, Christopher Reeve died? Do we never get a Superman because Christopher Reeve died? No. You recast him. They did it many times. You move on, right? Maybe you like this Superman. Maybe you don't. Maybe you like Henry Cavill. Maybe you don't. Doesn't matter. He can't play the role forever. You continue on, right? Otherwise, the whole franchise dies when the actor dies, okay? Or you get into the horrible nightmares of Frankenstein CG, and you're always constantly de-aging or having another actor with someone else's face. Get past it, okay? You know, I don't care if it's Luke Skywalker, if it's Indiana Jones, if it's Sherlock Holmes or Dracula. You recast, it's somebody else. It's Shakespeare, okay? You're going to have thousands of people playing Hamlet, okay? Get over it. It's fine. You just recast and move on. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. And reboot, in quotes, reboot, does not always have to be go back and tell the same story over with a different actor either. Reboot can also be a sequel or a prequel or anything that gets the franchise continuing to have content out there to enjoy.
I think most people would have been okay with other actors playing Luke, Han, and Leia. Well, unfortunately, some hated the guy that got to play Han Solo in the. But again, I think that was a lot of backlash.
Yeah, that was because there was a couple things. There were better options out there, and we knew that. And because of politics, it got whatever. But it also had to do with other things around it, right? Because they killed off Han Solo in a punk move in the sequels, and then they gave us, you know, the prequels. Nobody wants to see that
Solo
prequel
now. No
right?
one wants to see it if you killed the character off.
It's no different than what happened with Black Widow, and that was the same actress. It was too little, too late. You killed off the character. We don't care about the prequel anymore. It's too late. You should have told that story already, and you didn't. You know, it's timing as much as anything else. And again, prequels are usually a bad idea because we know where they're leading to. There are no stakes. There is no benefit. There are only downsides. You can only screw it up. Case in point, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, you can only screw it up. The story is known. Move on.
So on to the next one. We'll see if this Harry Potter thing comes out. It'll be kind of interesting though, because there's going to be backlash over it, but I might enjoy it because the people having the backlash are.
And I do think that I have to do this in two parts because
it's a deadline. Well, I try to mix it up. They can't all come from
No, no, no.
variety.
This is not my issue here. Has nothing. Don't choose your sources based on the length of the title or whatever.
Michael Giacchino to make a feature directorial debut with fresh take on them at Warner Brothers.
This one came out of left field for me. I was like, really?
It's the Giant Ant movie, right? From the 50s?
Yeah, well, it's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, and they're redoing
they're talking about.
Oh, I know Warner Brothers owns that movie, yeah.
This is one of those ones where there's a plus and minus here. On the one hand, absolutely, we can... I'm going to point to The Fly, for example. There is an opportunity to tell a story with better special effects and whatnot, and it could be much, much better, just so long as you don't lose the heart. And I've mentioned this about The Fly. I feel there were some elements that were missing. It wasn't a perfect movie because I feel the husband and wife with a child thing lent something to the gravitas of the stories, as opposed to the one night stand, girlfriend. But
yeah, well, they were making a point, though. I will say this: Cronenberg himself, and also Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum, they sent a letter, I think, to Vincent Price. They were saying, we're not here to, we're not making this to replace the original Fly. We respect the original movie. We're just, we're trying to do something that might complement it, for now, but not. But yeah, I do like the original, I think, a little more than the remake, even though the remake I saw first, oddly enough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I still feel there's a great deal more heart. You feel bad. You feel terrible for Vincent Price and for the wife and for...
I feel bad for in the sequel, though. I feel bad for everybody involved because it's just
yeah.
Jeff Goldblum gets really grody in that movie. If you want to get freaked out by Jeff Goldblum in a movie, watch that movie. But
I mean, it was well done. You can take nothing away from Jeff Goldblum or Gina Davis or even I unfortunately don't remember the actor, the boyfriend or whatever that that ends up losing his leg and everything, trying to stop Jeff Goldblum's character and whatnot. That's pretty grisly stuff. All those actors did a great job. There is nothing, and Cronenberg and the writing and directing was all spot on. It was good storytelling. I feel like there were some decisions that could have been better. There's always room for improvement. It's not a perfect movie, but it was a damn good one. Anyway, I've gotten off on a tangent there. But this is another example where, gosh, Them was a good movie, but it was of its time and it had its limitations. And there are definitely things that could be done better.
We'll see. Let's read the article.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oscar-winning up composer Michael Giacchino will make his big screen directing debut with a reboot of the 1954 sci-fi man-eating monster movie Them at Warner Brothers. Giacchino is meeting with writers in hopes of getting the production up quite soon. In the Gordon Douglas directed original film, which also was a Warner Brothers release, a huge nest of irradiated ants are discovered in the New Mexico desert and become a national threat when two young queen ants and their consorts escape to set up new nests. The national search that ensues culminates in a battle in spillways and storm drains of Los Angeles. There's always a movie in your mind that never leaves your head. Giacchino sells Deadline. For me, that's Them. It wasn't until later in life that I learned what it was about. The nuclear age, he adds. What I love about Them is exactly what it's called, Them. It's about the other, the unknown, which one refuses or can't understand. The current version of Them is about immigration, and to tell the story about the subject through the lens of this insane science fiction monster movie teases Giacchino about what his early version is for the pick. That's an odd statement, don't you think?
Yeah, that actually also concerns me because
it may not be a red flag. I don't know yet.
No, but it's
because maybe the one thing on the whole immigration, if you're talking about like illegal legal immigration. It could be about how nobody knows how to deal with the situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements there but it does seem like a very odd choice.
It's odd,
when you think about, and I don't care if it's nuclear concerns or whatever, science gone bad, the whole Frankenstein thing. Yeah, I can see it. It makes a lot of sense with them, or The Fly, or Godzilla is another great example. When you start talking immigration, I think what was that movie with the aliens and the guys turning into one of the aliens?
District 9.
District 9, yeah, that's a great example about immigration and
it's in
stuff
South
like
Africa.
that.
There's a wonderful line when they talk to one of the African guys, and it says, "Look, if these guys were from another country, it'd be different. These are aliens. They got to go." He made a point. I thought that was funny, and I could see someone saying that.
And everybody in that audience kind of does a, what, huh? I mean, it's like, wait a minute, and that gets everyone thinking, and that's good storytelling, and that's a
like this is supposedly a tolerant guy, and his tolerance doesn't extend to extraterrestrials. He's like, I'm done.
right, exactly. But so I don't know where this seems like, and the other thing too, I'm thinking this is a missed opportunity. If you want to talk about immigration, that's fine, but I feel like if you're going to do a story about giant ants and sci-fi and stuff, I think there are other science gone bad topics we could be talking about in the modern age, if you get my point, that you could do with this than immigration. Immigration, there's probably some other things you could be.
Because this could blow up, so I don't know.
I don't know. I see what you did there. It could blow up.
I know. We decide to nuke the immigrants, and the ants should get big as a result. I don't know what they're trying to. I don't know what this is supposed to be about.
I don't either. And I also just realized that I had this down twice. I had it on.
It's okay. I didn't.
I meant it to be a pivot, but I meant to also take it off of the end of the. Next
I figure it's kind. I kind of thought tonight was creature feature territory, because we've got some creature feature movies.
Because now we're starting to move into. I created a topic section here. We're starting to talk. The topics now is going to be horror, and this is kind of
this is like midnight movies. These are like midnight movies. This is like you have the 1950s sci-fi thing. Now you have another Evil Dead movie. I guess that's our next thing. We'll see. It's interesting.
Yeah, as we'll just
pivot right into it. Might as well.
I think it's so my understanding is this Evil Dead Rise looks like it's supposed to be taking place in the same Evil Dead world, and we're not. This isn't a reboot, right? This isn't a remake.
Evil Dead is odd. That's why I was almost tempted.
Oh yeah, it is. That it is. Yeah.
Because here's the problem: you have the original trilogy, which is Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Even there are arguments. Is Evil Dead 2 a remake? Is it a sequel? I consider it a sequel because if you chop the beginning off, you can see where the other one ends, this one begins. Same goes for Army of Darkness. Then you have Ash versus the Evil Dead, which was the series, which I wonder, is this a true sequel or is this apocryphal? Because even though it's great to see Bruce Campbell back, and it was a great series. In fact, it reminded me of like if they did Evil Dead as a Saturday morning serial or Saturday, movie, Saturday afternoon serial.
It really fits. Yeah, it really works that way. Yeah.
And then you had the Evil Dead remake movie, which was done as a straight up horror movie.
Yeah.
But I gave them points because even though it does take place in a cabin in the woods and it has people discovering the Book of the Dead like in the first one, they're all new characters. It's not like one person is supposed to be the new Ash or other characters in that original movie. They are all original characters. So they weren't necessarily just trying to go for straight up, this is a remake.
Which also makes it could absolutely be still taking place in the same universe. Could be a sequel, could be a remake, but it's not telling the story of the same characters at all. So
no. And it was endorsed by Sam Raimi. This was the one that he wanted. He produced it. He wanted, I think that the joke is that some of the goofy stuff in the original Evil Dead, people yelled at them, we wanted you to make a horror movie, you made a comedy.
Right.
It's like, that wasn't my intent, and that's why they moved.
Yeah.
They kind of went into the dark comedy in the sequels because they figured that's what people were expecting now. So they want to do one that was more just a straight up horribly
and I
gory
do
horror
have to
movie.
say this about Bruce Campbell: when he gets involved in something, of a horror nature, he does tend to push it into the humor area. Which,
He's funny.
If it's what you intend, that's great. But when it's the sequel and the first movie's scary, the second one not so much. It wasn't just with Evil Dead. Same thing happened with a movie that I love called was it Waxwork? Waxwork, I think it was.
Oh,
called.
he was in that. Okay.
He was in the second one. He was in the sequel. So the first one it's a horror movie. It is. The sequel is horror comedy, in a very Bruce Campbellish kind of way. And it's like, it's like, this isn't, when the sequel isn't in the same vein as the first movie, there's a disconnect. It's rough. And I can see a lot of people struggling with that with Evil Dead as well. So,
Well, I want to say this as far as this goes. Those of you complaining, where were you when Ash versus the Evil Dead was on? That show.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not complaining. I could
but I'm just saying there was your Ash sequel, and to be fair, you got 3 really good seasons. So
if nothing else that you can say about Evil Dead, it's its own thing. This is not, I did just draw a comparison to another movie, but by and large, Evil Dead is a different animal from any other
Hellraiser or.
It's not like Hellraiser. It's not like
Night
even
of
the
Living
zombie
Dead.
Movies where we were talking about the Romeros, and we've
No.
talked about this, where it's got all of its branching things, and some are comedies, and some are eat brains, and some are not, and you got your fast zombies, and slow, and they all tie back to the same original sequel. This is not that either. This is an entirely different animal, and good on it. Let's talk
a little bit about the article. I take it you watched the trailer. We'll talk a little about the trailer too. The Evil Dead movie franchise has largely been a series of cabin in the woods films, but Evil Dead Rise relocates the horrific happenings to the big city, as its first trailer demonstrates all too well. In Evil Dead Rise, the reunion of 2 estranged sisters is cut short by flesh-produced possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. The trailer follows Tuesday's teaser, which veteran Evil Dead star Bruce Campbell introduced on Twitter. Even though I'm not in the film, as a producer, I'm all over this movie like a cheap suit. I guess you could say I have a hand in it, said Campbell, referencing Evil Dead 2, in which his right paw becomes possessed. Now he continued, and he's funny, I've seen the movie in all of its glory, and in case you're wondering, yes, it is amazing, and yes, it is the scariest one yet. Evil Dead Rise is directed by Lee Cronin, The Hole in the Ground, and stars Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Morgan Davis, Gabrielle Eccles, and Nell Fisher. The movie is the 5th Evil Dead film, following 1981's Evil Dead, 1987's Evil Dead 2, 1992's Army of Darkness, all of which were directed by Sam Raimi, and 2013's Evil Dead from filmmaker Fede Alvarez. Sam handpicked Lee Cronin, who was a very good Irish director, who did a movie called The Hole in the Ground, Campbell told EW, talking about the film in 2021. Sam also worked with him on a couple of Queeby projects with Sam in his producing capacity, so he handpicked him like he handpicked Fede Alvarez. He added, people can actually call it what they want: sequel, remake, reimagining. It is just another Evil Dead movie. It's book-centric. It's all about the Necronomicon. Where does this book wind up? What happens to it over the millennia? In this case, it's set in a city. It's no more cabin in the woods. It's entirely different. Unsuspecting heroines who are going to save the day. Evil Dead Rise will open in cinemas April 21st, 2023. Watch the trailer below. You watched the trailer. Were you seeing a whole lot of city in the trailer? Maybe I wasn't paying attention.
I didn't. And one thing that I missed in the trailer, but that's only from foggy memories of the rest of the portfolio of Evil Dead, is that I think I remember Tom Connors on Midnight's Edge saying something about the sisters in this are related to a character from the previous run of films, which
Okay.
seems to imply it being like a sequel slash taking place in the same universe thing. So there's that. But I didn't get that myself directly from watching the trailer.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
But
It looked creepy.
it does. And let me tell you something. Even you stop and look at some of the stills from the promotional material out there, you're like, this. Look, even if this wasn't part of the Evil Dead, if this was its own standalone
Yeah.
horror film, it looks good and it looks a little bit unique. Like it's something that I haven't seen before. Exactly.
See,
So,
yeah.
go ahead.
Like I was okay if this would have been like I know people for some reason were mixed on the remake one that came out years back. I thought
Yeah.
it was good. I thought it was them trying to make it a harder, scarier
Yeah,
horror
that's
movie,
clearly
like what they
I
had
think
originally
that's their
intended.
stated intent. Yeah,
And this fits with this movie, so I'm thinking maybe they should just relate it to that one instead of trying to relate it to the Bruce Campbell movies. But maybe
I
they're
do kind of dig.
and they also
kinda,
argued originally they were going to try and bridge the two, the remake and
it
the
does
old one
feel
together.
like it's
Yeah.
all like it all could be related, and I'm kind of fine with that. There's nothing that says that all of this can't all be taking place in the same universe. I'm fine with that. And I love, although I haven't seen everything and I didn't see the series, I've liked what I've seen of the first three movies at least.
What they did in the remake, which I thought was interesting, they were it's a brother and sister, and the brother is getting his friends and her friends together because they're doing intervention, and they're trying to detox her before bringing her off to emo, like she's a drug addict. Okay,
Yeah.
in other words, she's going to kill herself because she's OD'd and stuff before, and it's like, so they have her locked up, and the trouble is when they find the book and the guy translated it because the one guy's a high school teacher and he was looking she gets possessed, but then you're wondering, and even at first you're wondering, is she really possessed or is this the detoxing and she's going nuts from not having the drugs? Do you understand? And it kind of plays with that both ways. Yeah.
That makes me wonder, not having seen that, now that
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say that, I wonder if the most recent Hellraiser movie was kind of lifting that idea from that.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Because there was, that was the kind of the whole shtick for this most recent Hellraiser reboot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this one turns out. I mean, I am going to say naysayers, even if you don't like the Sam Raimi is involved, he's not going to. I'm not expecting there to be messaging in this. If that's what you're worried about.
It also
It's
sounds
going to be a straight up horror movie. You know?
And here's the other thing. I think the biggest concern is when you love a film series like the Evil Dead, the original trilogy or the sequel, the series or the reboot, and you're like, well, this is going to kind of, dishonor or whatever. I think this doesn't hurt anything that's come before. It's looking like it's going to be the kind of thing that doesn't hurt what came before it. Maybe bridge some gaps, and at the very worst, it sounds like an entertaining horror movie that's relatively unoffensive to what came before it. So I'd almost be, let's give it a chance and see how it goes.
Won't have the idiot Ash in it though, but what can you do?
That character at this point is probably best in small doses. Throw an Easter egg in there, maybe an after credit scene or something like that.
He was stupider on the series. Do you know how the Evil Dead thing starts in the new series?
No.
He's like, why are the Deadites coming back? And then he had a flashback to when he was getting high with a girl in his trailer, and she says, "Read me some poetry, baby." And he goes,
"Oh my God,
and he's like, "Well, it's not
exactly
poetry." And he realized, "Oh, I'm the one that read the spell." And then later on in the show,
in keeping with like the Prince of what's it called? What was the third movie again? The Evil
Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
It's like that kind but worse.
Yeah.
And he like a couple episodes in, he's like, you know what? We got to figure out how to reverse this. Nothing in here. I can't figure this out. And he's like, you know what? Let's find let's summon a demon with this Necronomicon book. Let's summon a wimp, a nerd demon that we can bully into submission, and he'll tell us how to stop this. So they find this picture of some demon that looks like this nerd demon, and then they bring it up, and it doesn't look like and he looks terrifying, like not terrifying like in the usual demon way, but like he's like, your picture is not accurate in this book. And of course, this causes another problem because then this guy gets loose.
Of course it does.
And it's just he made the problem worse. And the show is like that. It's hilarious. But I don't know. I'll keep my fingers crossed in this movie. I'll check it out.
Let's see what comes up. Yeah.
Let's move on. This is the big one.
Yeah.
This goes into your. This may
I
be.
tell you something. This one. This is a perfect example of what I thought going into the trailer. And what I thought by the time the trailer was over, two very different places I was at.
Okay. Renfield. Nicolas Cage goes full bloodsucker. Universal has released the first trailer for Renfield, a Dracula movie starring Nicolas Cage. Despite movie and vampire fans' curiosity about Cage's distinctive spin on the voice and aesthetic of Count Dracula in the upcoming film, the Academy Award-winning actor is not the main character. Instead, the film's protagonist and namesake, Nicholas Hoult, who plays the Transylvania Count's right-hand man, Renfield. Renfield begins as a devoted servant who gradually becomes disillusioned with carrying out Dracula's malevolent deeds. When a traffic cop played by Awkwafina catches his eye, love fuels Renfield to reevaluate his outlook on life and his willingness to continue helping Dracula. The cast includes Ben Schwartz, Adrian Martinez, Shohreh Aghdashloo, and Bess Ross, and more. In Stoker's writings, Renfield was portrayed as a delusional inmate at the insane asylum who eats living creatures because he believes their blood will make him immortal. Stoker ultimately reveals, however, that these outlandish acts are a result of being brainwashed by Dracula. Renfield is directed by Chris McKay, who previously helmed the Lego Batman movie and its sequel, and Samantha Nissenbaum is executive producing the feature alongside Todd Lewis. The script was based on an idea from Walking Dead comic book co-creator Robert Kirkman and authored by Rick and Morty writer Ryan Ridley. Okay. So what did you think of the trailer?
So let's start here. There's a bit of a mixed bag here. Going into it, I had no positive expectations, okay? I went into it knowing this is the Nicolas Cage as Dracula movie. So I was like, oh God, what are we getting into here? As soon as I saw the trailer, I see Awkwafina in it, and fuck that bitch. And then, I realized that this is a Dracula story taking place with Renfield. I'm assuming this character is actually named Renfield, and It's taking place in the modern day. And I'm like, okay, so this is not Renfield because it's taking place in the modern day. Then I actually watched the trailer, and I was like, Nicolas Cage as Dracula. This is comical. Rick and Morty, Lego Batman movie. I see what this is. This could actually be really good as a comedy horror. Maybe we got something here. This is, although the other thing too is this is coming out from Universal. So this is again the Universal that was trying to give us a dark universe and an integrated. This is not how you reboot Dracula. Let me tell you that for damn sure. But
I like Nicolas Cage
as a one-off standalone Dracula comedy, could be something.
I think Nicolas Cage could pull off playing Dracula in anything, though, after seeing him in that trailer, though. He was just... I don't know. We'll see.
Matt Anui is asking who Awkwafina is. We should at least touch on that, because it is relevant, especially within this.
She's not your favorite comedic actress. I know that.
Yeah. Awkwafina was the sidekick character in that Marvel Shang-Chi, yeah. And she went off on this social media rant about being forced to play characters that are, Asian stereotypes and this and that. And then everyone's bringing up her comedy act, where that was all that her comedy act was. She's a hypocrite. She's a virtue signaling dumbass. All she did was alienate a bunch of fans, and I have absolutely zero respect for the woman. But Doesn't look like she's that important in the story anyway, so who gives a crap?
We'll see.
Yeah, no, you didn't miss anything, Matanui, by not seeing Shang-Chi. You'll be fine.
But let's see. Are they making a horror comedy with Nick Cage as Dracula? Basically, it's almost it's funny because the Renfield's going to a self-help thing, right?
Yeah.
Like a self-help group.
Yeah.
And
he says all these things that he knows, and you see it in his face as he's talking. It's one of those group, help.
He has a toxic boss. He's
got a toxic boss.
Relationship with his boss.
Renfield going to a toxic boss, a group help kind of thing, and he's saying these things about Dracula that you could see in his face. He's like, these people are going to think I'm nuts. And at first, they take him as being metaphoric, in what he's saying. So they're all agreeing with him and they're supporting him, and they totally are understanding what he's saying. And you start to realize the things that Renfield is saying about Dracula are just like the average person dealing with a toxic work environment. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty damn relatable.
But then it's he's the Lord, but then he shows up at the meeting himself and says, "Oh, come on!" And he's like, "No, don't
do that!" And then of course Dracula walks in because he's been invited.
Some call me the Lord of Death, and
it's like all these things. Floats up into the sky, and the guy is like, "Oh yeah, this is maybe a little bit beyond what we."
Like a narcissist, you're dealing with a little more than a narcissist. But I thought it's funny though. He has kind of the old school Bela Lugosi look, don't you think? A little bit. And he has the top hat that John Carradine had. I think that was another.
I'm glad you brought. Yeah, they definitely are doing homage to the previous ones. Yeah. There was one element, and I'm probably the only one that would even notice this. There's a close up on like the back of his head, and you can see really clearly that the coat that he's wearing is like a leather long coat, and I'm like, man, that looks really sharp. It looked really cool, and I've never seen that in anything before. There's some details in the costuming that were just really good. So there's some real. I have hope that this might actually be entertaining. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I mean, I think it might be worth a look. I'm going to wait to see what the critics say.
Yeah, I think that, I might be misreading this because of, it might not be Nicolas Cage driving the comedy either. Because
I think he's playing Dracula.
He might actually be playing Dracula straight.
Yes, and everything else is the comedic. Like if The Love at First Bite is Dracula in the 1970s, but now we have Dracula in the modern times, and how would that work? I think enough time has gone by. Because Dracula does not work in the 1970s. That was the joke of that movie, right?
And there are other YouTubers that I've agreed with about the portrayal of Dracula. Dracula is not meant to be the... what we saw in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the romantic.
No, he's a monster.
And even the romantic elements that you get from the Bela Lugosi are not truly romantic, right? He is a monster. He's
a predator. He's a villain. And I
think that Nicolas Cage is definitely playing that out, and he is not, someone who thinks he's all that and is a pushover. No, he is a freaking out there monstrous. He can outright kill you. So I think this trailer did exactly what a trailer needs to do. It takes you, it tells you what the basic premise of it is, and it takes you to a point where you're like, I want to see what happens next. Well, you got to go see the movie to see what happens.
It'd be funny if sequels had other monsters in them. If this one does well, you could poke fun of the Lon Chaney Wolfman thing. You could do that, like the Tortured Soul and all that. Just we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what they do. This could be. I mean, in a way, Universal Horror and Comedy. It has a tradition with the Abbott and Costello movies, so maybe that's sort of what they're going for here. I don't know. So we'll see.
This could be, maybe we're trying too hard to put it into pigeonholes. Maybe this is something so different that we got to take it at its own merits and see what it is. But again, we're hopeful, but we have no idea what's coming. So we'll keep you posted as we get more information about it.
Okay, so we're not going to do the Giancino thing again, so
Yeah,
we're going
we've
to go
already
on to
yeah, sorry about
something
that.
truly scary, Disney.
That was my
Okay.
mistake. Oh yeah, more dismal Disney, right? And again, I got to do it as two parts because
it's a
the
bright
link
part,
is
yes.
long. Yeah.
Here we go. Disney disaster. Major banks makes 2023 prediction that woke behemoth will dump ESPN ABC. Yeah. Banking giant Wells Fargo has made a 2023 prediction that I lost the thing. Hold on. 2023 prediction: the Walt Disney Company, which abruptly brought back former CEO Bob Iger to reverse the Walt Company's rapid downward spiral later this year, will end its ownership of TV networks ABC and ESPN. Bank analysis are predicting that some of the big changes Iger promised to initiate will include shedding the TV network and the cable sports network, both of which have been losing viewers. Fox Business Network reported. Spinning off the two networks is the best planned path forward. Probably a late 2023 event, leaving the Walt Disney Company an attractive, pure play intellectual property. FBN wrote. I have a question. They also own Fox, do they not?
Yes.
They own two networks now.
Yes.
Why do they need two networks?
I know. This goes back to what we were talking about before. There needs to be a streamlining, of their content, of their company structure, of all of it. Now, I got to be honest, reading this article, I was very much of two minds as I try to analyze this, right? Because on the one side, ESPN is probably the only thing in Disney that's making them money. It's
because of the sports things,
yeah. But as I dig into the numbers, even ESPN is losing money. Sports overall is losing money. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but the decentralization of sports, the whole cable thing and then cutting the cord and then where do I get it from, what streaming service, so on and so forth. Do I have access to it? Don't I have access to it? A lot of people are going, F it, I don't care anymore. And then you add on to it the whole, taking a knee bullshit and all that kind of crap. People are just over it. They don't care anymore, And so ESPN actually is losing, not losing money. I don't mean it literally. I mean they've lost the market share. They're not making as much money as they used to.
Well, here's what happened though. Apparently, ESPN Plus does not have the same content as ESPN on the cable, right? We read that a few weeks back.
That's part of what I'm getting at is,
so
how
people think they're going to cut the cord and go to the pay thing, but they're not going to get what they get.
Yeah.
So why am I getting ESPN Plus then?
I'm telling you,
it's just
the cord cutting thing is becoming, okay, I'm going to cut the cord because I can get it somewhere else. Oh, I can't get it somewhere else? Well, I'm cutting the cord anyway because I don't want cable anymore. I'm tired of paying this money for something and not getting the value.
It's expensive. Satellite too. It's expensive.
And the same is starting to come true, and I'm going back to what we said earlier in the stream, is all these different streaming services. It's getting more and more expensive for less and less. You're streaming one channel for one show, and you're like, this is not worth it, and so you stop and you go, okay, if it's Netflix, forget about it. A year from now, I'll get the DVDs for the show that I want. Disney, you never get those DVDs. Well, fuck Disney. I don't need this shit.
So yeah, apparently they lost 123 billion in market share last year alone. Yeah. That's a lot,
Disney
right?
Disney is hemorrhaging money. I've been saying this all along, and I'm tired of fighting the battles on the interwebs. There's no such thing as too big to fail, and Disney is failing. And look, people will say, yeah, but they don't get their money from this. They get it from that. And they get it from that. They are losing money on all fronts. The parks were devastated by the pandemic. They have not bounced back, and so now they are cranking up the costs of everything, and people are going, We have not bounced back from the depression our economy is under. We can't afford to go to these parks. Fuck you.
I read some article that some families, they go into debt to go to these parks. You can't go into debt to go to a park. If you're going into debt,
that is
don't be. I'm not saying
stupid.
that's the majority. I hope not. People go in these parks, but it's like don't go
ridiculous.
into debt for
but
vacation.
A lot of people aren't anymore, and the people like where you're at that were buying the season passes, they're not doing it anymore. They can't afford it because they're not getting the value out of it anymore. They're being taken advantage of. So the parks are not making the money that they used to. Streaming service is a money loser. Period. End of the line. It is. They're not making the most out of the content they have access to and aren't putting out because, you know, modern audiences and offensive and blah blah blah. Fuck you, whatever. You know, and the toys aren't making money because the toys are trying to prop up entertainment industries that nobody's interested in. Shang-Chi toys and Marvel, Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel and the Eternals and all of these toys are accumulating in the refuge bins and the ollies and nobody's buying this shit. The failed HasLab for the lightsaber for the whatever the female Darth Vader ripoff that nobody cares about, you know, and all this. It's like, you know, Disney is in a bad situation. And if you didn't know this, if you still don't see it from the things that I just said, the Chapek thing and bringing back Iger and all this literally happening overnight, and some people are tying it to you know, some things that are going on with the Bitcoin company and you know, the guy being extradited and stuff. Yeah. There's something happening with the finances at Disney, and it's falling apart. And I was predicting for a long time, we don't get to see their numbers, but you can only shuffle the cookies around on the plate to make them look like more so often.
Yeah.
You know, it eventually, the Bernie Madoffs can only keep the balls floating in the air for so long before it all comes crumbling down.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the coming year. Something has to happen at this point. There has to be. They can't just stay as they can't. The status quo has to change over there, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Eventually, you're going to hear about sell-offs like this that they're predicting. This is a prediction. This is not them saying they know this is happening, but these are financial analysts saying something's got to give, and this is what they think is going to happen. If something like this happens. And if you start seeing, you know, well, you're going to see layoffs. You've already started seeing them in December. This month, you're going to see a lot more. And you are going to see streamlining. And you are going to see them maybe selling off some assets. And I'll just be sitting here eating popcorn saying, I told you so. Not telling you guys I told you. You guys telling probably them. All know I know what I'm talking about. But there's a bunch of morons on the interwebs that kind of need to realize that.
Yes, hit the like, as deleted scenes say. Let's move on to D&D.
Yeah. This one is one that we've been sitting on for a couple weeks because, you know, the holidays we didn't get around to it. But it leads in very well to the next article, so we may as well touch on it.
The CEO of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro want to create a recurrent spending environment for Dungeons & Dragons because D&D is under-monetized. You're laughing at this. We're going to get into this. The CEOs and okay.
Before you could, let me just say this because this applies to everything we've talked about tonight too, as well as this. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. We have morons running these companies. Apparently they have all forgotten the very simplest, basic lessons of Economics 101. Supply and demand, give the people what they want and make money. Take their money and give them things they want. And keep doing that, and you make you rich is what you do.
Well, anyway, apparently I think I heard somewhere that a lot of ex-Microsoft execs are working over Wizard of the Coast or something, but
Yeah.
I don't know. When you hear of the world's most popular art role-playing game, you might think of heroic orcs, magical elves, or tieflings running an inn somewhere. Tieflings are what?
If you pause right there, it's very clear the writer of this article has no flippin' clue what they're even talking about, because there are no heroic orcs.
Anyway,
that's not what orcs are.
Tieflings running.
Tieflings are like elves. They're like
okay.
They're like elves.
They just mentioned magical elves. Okay.
Yeah.
But you might not have thought that the tabletop game or Fantasy Adventures is a game in need of a recurrent spending environment, and you'd be forgiven too. But because unless you're a Wizard of the Coast or Hasbro executive, odds are really good you've never thought the words D&D is under-monetized before. But that's just the thing. According to an investor-focused fireside chat with Hasbro CEO Chris Cox and Wizard of the Coast new CEO Cynthia Williams, D&D is under-monetized. The recent investor presentation tells us about the future of D&D, under-monetized though it may be. As Williams states, D&D has never been more popular, and we have really great fans and engagement. Both points are true according to data gathered from D&D Beyond, Wizard of the Coast's newest acquisition. Williams called out market data from the platform, which shows that while Dungeon Masters make up around 20% or so of the game's user base, the account for the lion's share of the spending. After all, the DM is the only one who needs to have a full set of rules. A player can get by with just the player's handbook, but the DM needs a monster manual, Dungeon Master guides, and any of the adventuring modules that Wizards of the Coast puts out if they're going to run them. If you look
exactly, you don't even necessarily need those. You can make up the adventure yourself, which is the whole point of a role-playing game.
Yes. So, so after all the DM, okay, so, yeah, and these are optional things. You just need the core set if you want to make stuff up.
Yeah.
Just to help you. And I know, I know there was a famous one back in the day about a bad tomb, right?
About a what?
Never mind. A tomb. Never mind. What do I know? I'm not the D&D guy here. Never mind.
Oh, you mean the Tome of Horror? Or the Tomb of Horror?
Yeah, maybe that's the Tomb of Horrors. Was that what
it was called?
It
was a killer dungeon that nobody likes, but it's such a classic. Everybody runs it at least once. It's apparently
it will kill off all the characters. That's how bad it is. Yes.
It is honestly, I don't even know. There are YouTube videos about it. It's worth checking out. There's a video that does kind of a walkthrough about it and kind of does little mini rants throughout it. It's like, well, this is how you get through this trap. How anyone would ever figure this out, or why such a trap would even exist, completely boggles the mind. Anyway.
Yeah. But the last big player-focused book was Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, introducing those subclasses books. Okay, so they're getting angry because we want to sell stuff, but it's all geared toward the DM, I guess, because the DM is the person that runs the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How to monetize D&D. But Williams and Cox hope to capitalize on the brand's popularity. D&D Beyond and the upcoming virtual tabletop represent an opportunity to create a recurrent spending environment, meaning monetization and merchandising, the most powerful force in the universe. D&D Beyond seems to be at the start of their plan for digital monetization. Players can already buy custom dice and avatars on D&D Beyond, but with new digital-only supplements like the Monster Risk Compendiums, Wizard of the Coast may be testing to see what appeals to D&D's multi-generational fans. Under the new concepts unveiled at the Fireside Chat, D&D will transition into a fourth quadrant brand, means not just the tabletop RPG, but also video games, movies, toys, and more. You might be wondering, doesn't D&D already do this? Yes, I thought they did already do this. The answer is yes, but Wizard of the Coast has only just begun to monetize, with the potential to sell things to a full 80% of the user base. They stand to make a lot of money. Whether or not D&D community will stand for another thing entirely. Right now, the executives are focused on ways to keep the brand being the golden goose for the parent company Hasbro. which is about what you'd expect when something goes corporate. It stops existing for the sake of itself and instead needs to turn a profit. So things like rules, balance, and world design might take a backseat when other more profitable options are on the table. Games like League of Legends and Fortnite are some prime examples of a recurrent spending environment right now. But you can't exactly sell a Thanos D&D skin. I mean, I guess you could, but it's not the same. Anyone can already play Thanos or Wolverine or whoever in D&D, for better or worse. 2024 is going to be a big year for D&D, which enters its 50th year of existence. Question for you: what are they talking about here with this whole digital D&D storefront? Like, would you have to buy a new set of dice each time you want to play the game or something? Or
No, I think what they're getting at is there's this idea that you go to the Hasbro, Wizard of the Coast, whatever, to get whatever the accoutrement you want for the game. But it sounds like they're also talking about things like, honestly, I think ultimately what they're trying to get to, and they don't want to say it outright, is some sort of subscription service. They want you to pay them on a monthly basis to have access to the rules, and as the rules get updated, you get access to them and whatnot. And I think that's exactly what they're going
Yes, it's like it's almost like what Microsoft did with Office. I used to buy Office, and you get like 3 different offices that you could put on any laptops.
The problem is that does and honestly, I'm gonna put a pin
now it's
in
subscription.
This.
Now it's subscription based.
I'm gonna put a pin in this because I'm gonna be coming back to this when we start talking about the other thing that they're doing, which I think ties directly into that, and that's them changing their open game license. They are literally. And I understand why they're doing this, but they're literally blowing themselves up to spite themselves. I don't know. They're hurting themselves more than they're ever going to see any benefit from them. Here.
The open game license, I take it, and I'm not an expert on this, but I take it years back they allowed anyone can use the D&D rule set for something they create. Is that what it basically was?
Here's what it was, and actually I thought it was brilliant at the time, and it was. It actually. Kept D&D alive, okay? Let's back up to even before that, okay? We're on 5th edition of the rules, right? This is how TSR and then later Wizards of the Coast and then later Hasbro's Wizards of the Coast made their money. They'd put out a rules set, and they'd keep it going, and they'd make more money by selling those books, selling more modules, et cetera, and so on and so forth. And then they said, okay, we're going to put out a 2nd edition rule. You have to buy all the books all over again in order to keep playing under the new rules. It's completely different. They're not compatible, and you need to buy the books all over again. And, there's all these improvements, right? Okay. 2nd edition had great things about it, but there's also some things that really sucked. So then they scrapped all that, and they put out 3rd edition. And we bought all the books all over again, right? Mm-hmm. And at least this time they said, you know what? There's some major problems here, so we're going to put out another version. It's not 4th edition, it's 3.5, and everything's going to still be compatible, right? And at this point, with the 3.5 and whatnot, that's when they started their open game license. And what they did was actually synergistically brilliant. They said, as long as you buy our main book, the Dungeon Master Guide and the Player's Handbook, which is the core of the rules, if you are a company that wants to put out content, in other words, you can't put out your own version of our rule book, but if people buy that from us and you want to put out modules that use our rule set, if you want to put out alternate class splat books is what they're called.
Yes.
You can do that under the open game license. If you want to, and something else that people don't realize, and what led to the incredible success of Dungeons & Dragons in recent years, If you want to stream you and your friends playing a game, you
Ah,
can do that, and that's how we get Critical Role and the explosion of interest, showing famous people playing these games, and whatnot. Great interest there. A company called Paizo that was doing supplemental books for. They actually were the ones that were publishing Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine for Wizards of the Coast. When Hasbro decided they were going to go with their fourth edition, or maybe it was Wizards of the Coast at the time, decided they were going to go with fourth edition, Paizo said, under the open game license, we're going to keep supporting 3.5. And they put out their own rules set, which is just different enough, but it's still basically 3.5. And most people that were playing 3.5 said, screw it, I'm not buying another D&D book. I'm going to go and continue playing with Paizo. And so they kept doing their thing. And you also have to remember that miniatures, and terrain and maps and all that stuff is not D&D specific. So everybody out there in the gaming community is putting out LED miniatures, 3D print your own miniatures, whatever.
yeah.
So there's a synergy there, but it's also money that Hasbro's not making directly.
So now they're getting greedy. That's what it's sounding like.
It kind of is, and they're tightening screws that are not going to help them. It makes sense, but the fact is, okay, Hasbro can put out a lightsaber with electronic sounds and lights, okay, so that you can role play as a Jedi Knight. But you also don't need that to roleplay as a Jedi Knight. You can go get a wiffle bat and go woo, 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 which is what all the kids did when I was growing up, right? Or you can go to all the other companies that are putting out laser swords, and they have their own electronics and stuff, and a lot of them are better than the ones that Hasbro are putting out.
There you go. So
there's nothing you can do about that. It's just the way it is. So yeah, that's what I see happening here with this.
But if it's more successful than it's ever been, it's still pulling in a profit for them, right?
Well, is it though? See, that's just it. They've focused so much on their books that they're not focusing on. Hasbro is a toy company. They should be putting out more of these miniatures and terrain and stuff like that, and they're not doing it, and I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
Stuff to enhance the actual gaming experience at the table. You can have these cool little
there are two options, okay, for people that want to do the stuff at the table, right? It's you buy LED miniatures or pre-print 3D print stuff and paint it all yourself, or you buy mass-produced cheap plastic miniatures, which are just fine. And for a while, Hasbro was doing it. They did that under the auspices of, and you guys have all seen this. You buy a box of miniatures, right? And you don't know what's in there. It's all random. And some of them are rare and some of them are not. And you could build, a huge collection this way. Hasbro was doing that for the longest time. I don't see them doing that anymore. That's really where they're missing out on their opportunities. They should be putting out all these little plastic miniatures and plastic dragons and plastic, fighters and orcs and elves and stuff. They're not doing it. I don't know what their thought is. Maybe they want you to do it all digitally and subscribe.
Yeah.
And if you don't subscribe, you can't have your 3D miniature. But nobody wants that. No, because when the electricity goes out and it's raining and I'm sitting in the basement with my friends in the dark, I want to be able to pull out a lantern and roll some dice and play some
D&D. Let's move on to the next article.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I fell behind here. I need to.
No, it's fine.
Copy and paste. Oh, yeah,
But
here we go. Here we go. This is the other problem that we're having with Dungeons & Dragons. We've kind of touched on this before.
This strikes me as a hit piece, and I'm not going to read the thing in its entirely, but I pulled out excerpts, all right?
Yep.
How a new generation of gamers is pushing for inclusivity beyond the table. For decades, players.
Let me translate that. How a bunch of spoiled, whiny bastards want the whole world to bend to make them feel better. Go ahead.
Okay, for decades, players of tabletop role-playing games have used dice, pens, and paper to engage in a form of entertainment that combines collective storytelling with strategic puzzle solving and combat simulation. Once considered a niche hobby, these types of games are experiencing a boost in mainstream visibility thanks to series like Netflix's Stranger Things and the upcoming film Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. According to, I'm sure it's going to be a massive hit. So, anyway,
it may be.
We'll see.
Don't know yet.
I'm thinking no, but we'll see. We'll see. According to industry estimates, hobby game sales soared during the pandemic, increasing from about 1.6 billion in 2019 to over 2.6 billion in 2021. Tabletop role-playing games saw a 31% increase in overall sales in 2020. 2022, Dungeons and Dragons alone generated some 100 million to 150 million as tabletop RPGs permeate popular culture through podcasts, live streamed internet shows, and celebrity boosters. The community surrounding them is becoming more diverse. Traditionally seen as a pastime for white male suburbanites, tabletop gaming has more recently become a platform for minorities and marginalized people to tell their own stories. People of color and women have always been part of the tabletop role-playing game culture, said Stephen Dashiell, a postdoctoral fellow at American University who specializes in studying male-dominated subcultures. But actual play shows, the term for a tabletop role-playing game performed for audience, give them more disability, Dashiell added. Recently, actual players have been finding port with a new generation of gamers, many of who come from diverse backgrounds. Social media allows fans of these shows to form communities and organize meetups when they play their games they watch. Now, so far, it's not sounding like the existing community was trying to exclude anybody. Are you getting that from this?
No, if nothing else, the reality of it is, look, it's just like any other game or activity that exists. It's something you do with your friends, and if you are a bunch of white males, in suburbia, or you are, inner city, minority, you're getting together with your friends, you're playing your own brand of your own game. Whatever.
Yeah, it's do you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it says this new guard of hobby geeks are highly aware, and if they are not directly BIPOC people, they are allies, said Aaron Trammell, and an assistant professor of informatics at UC Irvine. But even with these gaming communities, there is some friction. Old School Renaissance, or OSR, is a gaming movement whose players claim they are, quote unquote, against outside politics permeating their game space, said Dashiell. These players support the use of traditional fantasy tropes in game design, such as the existence of good and evil races with no nuance. OSR gamers are often seen as the old guard of tabletop gaming and tend to idealize the past, which defaults to a white, masculine worldview, Trammell said. Created in the 1970s, Dungeons & Dragons is one of the first and most prominent tabletop RPGs, Dashiell said, and race has been key in character design. Yeah, so this is okay. So let me keep reading. Unless you had something you wanted to say real quick.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
When players create their in-game personas, they generally choose different aspects from a menu that culminates in an imaginary character with a history, personality, physical traits, and special talents. Characters can be one of many different races, such as humans, elves, or dwarves. These character types could be considered various species. Some resemble real animals, while others are more like dragons or even angels. But
okay, actually, you know what? Yeah, let me stop you there real quick.
Go right ahead.
Because first we have two excellent points that the chat's brought up. Mr. Matchstick says the problem for Wizards of the Coast and woke guys is that D&D is entirely in the player's hands. Yeah, that was my first thought. This mental masturbator is, pontificating about his theories And everyone who plays this game doesn't give a shit because they're going to play it the way they want, whether you like it or not. Too damn bad. Matanui says if they've always been there, talking about people of color and women and so forth, then why do they need to change it so much to suit them? They don't. That's exactly it. I mean, this is not about, bringing more people in. It's about this person looking down his nose at what he believes to be, and again, these are the same people that are only in the first world do you have the luxury to sit back and philosophize about whether or not there's isms and phobes being implicit in this storytelling or whatever. I mean, we literally have something that is non-linear, made up by the player, and you're gonna shit all over it. Get the fuck out,
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, we dropped our source. This comes from fucking PBS. This is literally socialist crap.
Well, the article gets better, Troy. Let me continue on.
Yeah.
Characters can be many different quote-unquote races, such as humans, elves, or dwarves. These character types could be considered various species. Some resemble real animals, while others are more like dragon. Okay, but the different beings have always been racially coded, according to Dashiell, with humans specifically having always been seen as an analog for white. Now,
unless you're playing a black character or an Asian character. I mean, because the fact is, you actually you've had Oriental Adventures back in the first edition.
You had the monk character who was always portrayed like a Shaolin monk. So I know. You can be any pigment.
This person is literally talking about something he has no fucking clue about. He assumes things based on his own personal biases.
So let's move on. Dungeons & Dragons has a tradition of promoting humans as the best or most versatile characters. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm using video game logic here, but I'm assuming humans are the most balanced, whereas elves might be the fastest, but they're not good at physical
what
combat.
It is that
dwarves are strong, but they're slow, that sort of thing.
Sort of. I mean, that's not...
that's probably not how it exactly is.
As a human, you get no... you get averages. You don't get pluses and minuses on things, whereas I think you get bonuses on intelligence and wisdom for elves. You get bonuses on constitution and strength for dwarves. Things like that.
So Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons & Dragons, was a self-described biological determinist. I looked this up online because I'm like, this strikes me as a hit piece on Gary Gygax. I looked up, what is biological determinism? This is from Britannica. Biological determinism, also known as biologism or biodeterminism, the idea that most human characteristics, physical or mental, are determined at conception by hereditary factors passed on from parents to offspring. That doesn't strike me as so controversial. I get my red hair from my grandmother, I mean,
this is literally how genetics work. But we live in an age where these first world mental masturbators want to tell you that whether you're male or female has no determination. And for crying out loud, men can have babies and menstruate, apparently, to these dumb fucks.
The article also goes to say he believed that different races of people were biologically distinct and capable of different things in life. Now, I'm sorry. I don't know where they were getting that from. I clicked on a link to an old issue of Dragon magazine from, I believe, 1978.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find in there what exactly did he say, because it's sounding like they're trying to portray him as some sort of an istophobe or something like that. And I'm trying to find
I mean, they're making the assumption that biodeterminism is not the German eugenics. If you are this, you are definitely going to be this, and you have an advantage on this. But real science will tell you, certain kinds of muscle groups are genetically pretty. You have a greater ability to jump, or you have a better ability to be strong, and you can develop those things. And yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't have the gene for having hair, so you're bald. Nothing you can do about that. Yeah, there is a certain amount of determinism in your genes. That is how it works. I'm sorry, if you've got the XY chromosome, you got a ding. And you can and you could put a baby in a woman, but you can't get a baby put in you. That's just determinism. That's science. That's the way it works.
Well, it reminded me of an old Cosby Show episode, but never mind. We'll go on. Anyway, Dungeons and Dragons has a tradition of promoting humans as okay. But anyway, hold on. Okay, yeah. Here's what I don't understand, though. I read this Dragon magazine. This is where I was, and all I found was an article about how, hey, can we have half orcs and half elves and all this? And he said that Gary Gygax was explaining the complications of when you keep doing this thing of mixing these races in D&D. How it's like it gets complicated. He says, well, why not do 3 races in one character and see? And he's saying if you're just making this over, I think he was basically just saying you're making this overly complicated. That's why he had the default being half elves.
Well, and the fact is that anyone who's dealt with this stuff in role playing kind of knows that there's a couple things, right? There's the ultra realism, right? I mean, can you even have mixed races, right? Can you combine a I don't know, a horse with a giant you can't mix a horse with a cow, okay? And if you cross a horse with a what is it, a donkey, you end up with a mule that is sterile, you know? I mean, there are certain realities about what can and cannot mix. It
strikes me as players trying to make things overly complicated because they want to increase stats.
It's not just being overly complicated. They're trying to get the benefits of all the different races. It's this metagaming. And that's not how a game is. That put the science now aside, put the genetics aside, real world logic aside. This is now the game mechanics. And it's, any dungeon master will tell you, well, that's fine. If you want to have all these benefits, that's great. But then I'm going to just decide that the bad guys have all these benefits that you don't have access to even it out. Because it's a game. There's got to be that kind of balance,
This can be seen in early DVD with non-humans and demi-humans all having level caps, said Trammell. This means that earlier editions of the rules, non-human characters could never achieve the same degree of growth as human characters.
Hold on, stop right there. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Remember, I told you earlier that elves and dwarves and all these other non-human races get benefits that the humans don't get. That is why they have to set a cap on it. It doesn't make any sense if you think about it in terms of genetics or the real world or any of that kind of stuff, but it does make sense in a game. Because otherwise, all of your characters get to 20th level, but you have certain characters operating at what would otherwise be 30th and 40th level just because of the benefits they start out with. It's called game balance for a reason, yeah.
It goes on to say, additionally, orcs were created as a group of bestial humanoids with the sole purpose of being killed by players. This classic quote-unquote evil race could not be chosen by the players for their character until 1993, with the release of the Complete Book of Humanoids, a source book for the second edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons.
That is
true. The works of J.R. Tolkien are credited as an inspiration for Dungeons & Dragons, with the game's own appendix N. And Tolkien has described orcs in the xenophobic vernacular of 1950s Britain. This was taken from an interview Tolkien had about some guy that was going to make a Lord of the Rings movie wanted to make them look like birds and explain, no, you make them look like this. And I don't know if it was the most PC language available, but I also don't think it's what we think he said it meant to be. Do you understand?
What he said, Tolkien was very clear. Orcs were not meant to be any race that exists in the world. They were meant to be demons, devils. Yes. They were supposed to be irredeemable. They were the bad guys. It was that simple. If you want to put it in terms that these these socialist dumbasses would understand. It's like the Nazis in frickin' Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're the bad guys. They're Nazis, so you know they're bad.
Over the years and through subsequent editions of the game, these racial illusions have generally been minimized. In the summer 2020, amid a reckoning of race and inclusion throughout many of the industries, Wizards of the Coast released a statement outlining steps it was taking to help everyone feel at home around the game table and see positive reflections of themselves within our products. This is what I don't understand. You can play as any kind of human in the game. The humans are not coded to be white. They're just coded to be human.
Right.
It's like in Star Trek how the humans are humans.
Yep.
And you have all these. Never mind. Okay.
I just feel like it comes back to what I hear so many people in the entertainment industry. I just want to say that to this guy. If you don't like it, don't play the game. Fuck off. I don't care what you think.
But for every 2 steps forward, they take 1 step back to Miles. It's citing
random thoughts. Are we the baddies?
That's
just it, though. You absolutely can be the baddies. That's the whole point of the role-playing game. There's actually modules where you can specifically play as the goblins in a dungeon fighting against the adventurers coming in to the dungeon.
Citing a recent but their complaints about a simian race of humanoids reminiscent of old minstrel shows. I think he's talking about what was the name of that one that was like a post-apocalyptic D&D world? Dark Sun or something, or what was that called again?
Dark Sun was a D&D setting where magic almost didn't exist anymore. There was and most of the world was a desert. I don't know anything about it, though. I don't know what kind of races they had in it and whatnot.
I don't know if that's what it's from. I got the impression that this race was sort of like the Planet of the Apes. They wanted a race that resembled those in D&D.
Sure.
Is that what that that's what that reminds me of?
If that's the case, then yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It was in this other world that wasn't necessarily the mainstream world. That's the impression I got. So I don't think that's what they were intending with that race, but everybody's freaking out.
I'm telling you, people that come up with this bullshit, it says more about them than it does about the people playing the game or the people that write the game. They're bending over to find nefarious, racist things about these games. The fact that they even came up with it says more about them than it does about us.
Okay.
Anyway.
I don't know. And it goes on. Let me just get to the point of this, though.
Yeah.
The issue was never really race, but essentialism, National agreed. Essentialism is baked into the D&D and its DNA. I think many of us would consider it a completely different game, as race species give advantages and disadvantages. And there needs to be checks and balances, system, variety, consistency, and fun. Okay. Anyway, this is going on forever. This whole thing struck me as a hit piece against the. It's the first time I've seen it mentioned in the mainstream media against the old school Renaissance. I don't know if you're familiar with this movement in the RPG scene.
No.
I think they want to go back to the old D&D. They're tired of it. They're making their own books to go along, I guess, with the source material. That's not official Wizards of the Coast thing, because I think they're just tired.
Okay,
of
fine. Go ahead and do
stuff.
that. Nobody cares. But what it comes down to is, I just see this as another group of the social deconstructionists that want to destroy everything, whether it's our entertainment, our games, our whatever. Calling them bad, calling us istophobes for enjoying them, twisting what they actually are. And in a way, how is this any different than the goofball religious nuts in the late 70s and early 80s that said everything is satanic? It's like,
that's what this is reminding me of. Yeah,
it's just a different kind of puritanism because you're all dumbasses.
It just seems like they were getting over celebrating how now many different types of people are now playing D&D, and now they're yelling at the thing that drew them to D&D to begin with.
Yeah. Well, we can't have a game that brings a bunch of diverse people together, so we got to find a way to throw a monkey wrench into that to make sure that we keep everybody divided as much as possible. Because for crying out loud, we're PBS and we're trying to bring out the socialist revolution here. Don't you understand?
Anyway, let's end on possibly a happy note.
Yeah, this kind of bookends where we started with our
Yeah.
good old days.
So I would have spent more time on that article, but it's getting late, and I think we got the gist of it. It just goes on. It's more verbal dialogue. I just don't understand. You can play as any kind of human you want in the game.
Yeah.
You can make analog to
If
actual.
your game is racist, that's you deciding to play a racist game.
And you know what people do in their living rooms. It's what they do. You know, you can't police that. But I've never gotten the impression that the RPG community was like this. So I don't really understand what they're going on about.
It's predominantly. I mean, if you go to what's it called, Gen Con or something like that, it's predominantly pretty liberal type people.
Yeah, so I don't get it. Atari to announce new handheld mini arcade and home console. So here you go. If you want to own an Atari yourself, those of you missed out. Oh wait, here we go. The whole problem is you got more comfort. Most of human history, we either had a cause to fight for or fight to survive. Now we're fixed on fighting, and now we fixed most of what we were fighting for, or had to find some or something. Don't worry, yeah, we'll have actual things at some point because things keep. I'm getting terrified. Things are going to start falling apart, but we'll see. Let's talk about Atari. Okay, the news is now officially official. Atari and My Arcade are releasing 3 new console collaborations. We had a bunch of hints dropped on their Twitter accounts in the past week, and we know the pair were going to be announcing at least 3 new consoles at CES 2023 event. Some of those Twitter posts made it pretty obvious that what was coming, but they hadn't actually said anything about the consoles besides the photos. So now the 3 console releases are official. Let's take a look at what's coming from Atari and My Arcade and their exciting collaboration. The most exciting console collaboration from Atari and My Arcade was the Game Station Plus. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. It does look nice. Like the other announcements, there wasn't a lot of info given, but this was the only console that Atari posted on Twitter. Clearly, it's one they're most proud of. Atari did clarify that the Game Station Plus will include a collection of games from the Atari 2600, Atari 7800, and Atari Arcade. So this is going to be the definitive way to play the best Atari 2600 games, best Atari 7800 games on real Atari console, besides the original if you have it. It is technically not Atari's first entry into the mini market, but this is certainly the ultra premium entry we've been waiting for. If you're a fan of the mini consoles, check out our list. Okay, this little thing. Atari VCS. It is also important to address the Atari VCS console that was released in 2021, because a lot of people would assume this would be the way Atari intended us to play their classic games on a new Atari console. But Atari has not turned the VCS into a full-fledged retro game machine, and they have only released 14 Atari 7800 games for the console through the online store. I think the Atari VCS is kind of done. I think they're now partnering with another company to make Atari products. You didn't know about the Atari VCS, did you?
No, I didn't.
And I don't think.
But I did want to, because this is an interesting comment, and I hadn't thought about it. I thought Atari went bankrupt and ceased to exist. Gorilla Random Thoughts said.
The title, they get bought out by companies over time. So Atari goes bankrupt and some other company. I know Infogrames years back, they bought the Atari name. I don't know if they're still currently the owners of Atari, if it went to somebody else since then, but the Atari name still has value. It's like if McDonald's went bankrupt, you know another company is going to buy up McDonald's even just to have the name, you know, on the arches.
Hostess recently did that too.
Yeah, so is it the Atari of old? No, but for the Atari of old hasn't really existed for a long time. But
true.
They keep promising to bring it back. We can assume that we see some of those Atari VCS game entries repeated on the Game Station Plus, in addition to many more classics that were not available on the VCS. I'm not anticipating that the new Game Station Plus will have any sort of online game download functions like the VCS. Seems to be a preloaded device, and that is what it is when you buy it. So I guess this looks like Sega Genesis Mini Super Nintendo Classic, like you buy these things and it has all the games on it already. Because the best Atari games are available on many other platforms, we should not measure the value of the Game Station Plus and what games are exclusively available on this device. We should not measure the value of the Game Station Plus and which games are exclusive. That's what you should measure.
I know.
You can buy the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection for $40, maybe less, on a modern console. The whole purpose of having these fancy mini consoles you plug into your TV is that they contain games you don't get anywhere else. Like the Sega Genesis Mini had the Sega CD games on it, the last one that came out, and had a lot of third-party games on it that weren't necessarily included in your typical Genesis collection, because that's usually just the stuff Sega owns. And typically with a lot of these Atari devices, it's all the stuff Atari owns. So I would hope if they're releasing this, they get the licenses, even if they can't get the licenses like Donkey Kong or Pac-Man. Put some other things on there that we haven't seen before.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It looks fancy though. You saw the pictures. I'm sorry I can't show
did.
you
Yeah,
guys.
it does.
Those Atari controllers look very nice.
Yep.
But yeah, so if you want an Atari console, one's available. There's also a portable one they announced as well. If you want something you can hold in your hands to play some 2600 on your go. Did you imagine as a kid that you'd be able to just have this little portable device, bring it wherever you wanted to go, and have all your 2600 games in one device?
That would have been ideal, but I never even thought that would be possible.
Yeah. So now that is something I'm looking forward to. And besides Blade Runner 2049, Atari still exists. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was funny. Atari is an example of just mismanagement of the brand. Also, I think Nolan Bushnell, who did he sell it to? Mattel?
I don't know.
I forgot what happened. Maybe it was Milton Bradley, I think. And they said, "Don't worry, you're still going to be able to run Atari as you ran it before. We're just the new owners. I'm going to buy it from you for a lot of money." And then they buy it, and he says, "You're out."
I can almost guarantee. Gorilla Random Thoughts. They will not be putting the ET game on this console. I can guarantee that.
I hope there's some good stuff in there, even some 700 games. And the arcade games, the Atari arcade games still hold up. I mean, I know some youngins may look at the 2600 games, but those arcade games hold up very well. I'm considering this, though, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Atari controller, these controllers look very nice. They look very fancy. They look like if they were making an Atari controller now with what we have now, what it would look like. And they look very fancy. So I'm considering this. I want more information on it. But if they can pull just the best from the libraries and put some third-party games on there, don't just use the Atari-owned stuff. Go out on a limb, put Mountain King on there. I'd be very happy. Mountain King.
If they can put this out and make it available to people instead of putting it out there and nobody can get a hold of it,
you have to go onto a storefront, either online or in an actual store, and buy this thing. You can't.
Yeah.
None of this. I'm going to pre-order it, and then it never comes out, which happened with the Intellivision Amico, which was another story. But
right.
I don't know though. Does this, as an old Atari fan, though, this pique your interest a little bit? I'm kind of curious.
I mean, also as somebody who's been playing a lot of these games for years on emulators and whatnot, I don't know, maybe. I'm not. I mean, depends on what the price point is and what we're talking. Like you said, I've got to see more about it, but we'll see when we get more information.
It's kind of redundant because you could argue, there's Raspberry Pis. You can buy these machines. People will make them, or you can make them yourselves, where you put all the ROMs on yourself, legally or illegally. But and then also there are also official collections, like apparently this Atari 50th anniversary collection is excellent. It's not just the games. There's like interviews with the people who created them, like artwork and manuals you can look through. Like it's like a museum basically.
Nice.
And people were big fans of it that came out recently. So there's that. That's another way to play retro games too. So what's the value of having just this standalone device? I think it gives you the feel for having an older console. It replicates that thing of having it in your living room. It's the best thing to owning the actual original thing. It's like the next best thing and maybe it's just for us old timers. I'm kind of curious about this. I mean, it has 7,800 games on there. Apparently 5,200 gets no love, but
well, it also makes me wonder if they're going to have games from 2600 and then the later ones. Are they going to have like different versions of the same game? Will you get like the 2600 version of Space Invaders, the 7800 version of Space Invaders?
Well, I haven't even seen Space Invaders on these things. They need to put Space Invaders on here. They need to put the 2600 version of Space Invaders.
Yeah.
Because this should not just be about you being able to play the Atari games that Atari owns. It should also be it should be replicating what it was like to own some of these Atari consoles. I know they're not going to get. It'd be awesome if they could get Donkey Kong on there. I know that would probably be held a license from Nintendo, but that would be cool just to have it on something. But we'll see.
Yep.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep an eye on this. If they have some footage of it, maybe I'll send it to you.
Cool.
It's late. I didn't realize we were going to go on this long, so I think we're going to wrap it up here. What you got going on this week? Nothing for Birdman this week. He's a little under the weather, but
so he confirmed
it's family situations. But we'll keep an eye on his channel. We'll be back soon.
So this Friday on last call. Our guest will be that 70s rock fan. We will, of course, be talking about 70s rock and growing up in the 70s, and probably a little bit about the differences between growing up in the 70s here in the United States and over there in the UK. It should be an interesting chat.
Yeah, that's definitely it's a nostalgia trip, so I'll be curious to hear that conversation. And
then Saturday over on Big Al. No, wait a minute. Was Big Al Presents this week? No, Netter was last night. So Big Al Presents this week, and I'm drawing a blank on what was on his channel.
I don't know.
Bear with me, guys. I'm going to look it up because I think he may have already posted it. Big Al Presents. Coming live. Oh, right. It was Dark. What was it? Dark Star. A rewatch of Dark Star from 1974.
Oh, the John Carpenter movie.
Exactly. The precursor to, in a lot of ways, the reason that we have Alien.
Yeah.
And some of his other films. Mr. Matchstick was saying that, building the DC Phase 1 on Tuesday the 24th.
Looking forward to that. And I have to tell you, as I'm trying to figure out my Phase 1, it's tricky.
It is.
It's not as easy as you think it would be.
This is what I wish the creators of these shared universes would understand. You've got to put the thought into them to begin with. Don't do all this. You get 3-4 phases in and you go, oh, now we're going to retroactively put this into the past. No, you need to front load with that stuff. Cool.
But
yeah, so that's what we got coming up.
All right. So y'all have a good week, and I will see you next Sunday.
Take care, everyone.
Happy birthday, Troy.
Oh, thanks so much.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.